He was shocked to the core when he suddenly discovered his wife in the arms of his own brother. Without hesitation, he slammed a photo of the two of them onto the table. She begged for forgiveness, but it was too late. Even their daughter would soon turn her back on her. What caused this betrayal? And what secrets will be revealed next? Find out in this shocking story of love, betrayal, and payback. Dave Pearson smiled as he glanced up at the door to his office. It was late Friday evening, and the cheerful Pearson Systems work family was bustling about in anticipation of the weekend. He was proud of his 33 employees, all working together to make his suburban Philadelphia business thrive. Among the team was Dave's wife, Linda, who handled accounting duties. She mostly worked from home but often came in on Fridays to distribute paychecks and keep in touch with the staff. Dave's brother, Rich, the company's chief salesman, was also present, wrapping up his week. Dave felt immense pride in how seamlessly his family and employees worked together to create a well-oiled machine. Life was good, but unfortunately, this feeling wouldn't last long. Dave's office manager, Hannah Kemp, interrupted his pleasant thoughts by knocking on his door. "Boss, I'm finishing up and heading home. I wanted to ask if there's anything I can bring for tomorrow's party." "Hey, Hannah, who's this boss you're talking about? Everyone knows you're the one really running the show around here," Dave teased with a grin. Hannah laughed. "Exactly, but I still wanted to check. Do you need me to bring anything?" "I think Linda's got everything under control," Dave replied, raising his voice slightly. "Honey, do you have a minute?" he called. Linda, pretending to look around the room with mock surprise, answered with a playful smile. "Honey? Oh, are you talking to me? Who else could it be?" Dave shot back. Linda walked over, and the three of them laughed together. Dave took the opportunity to maintain a light-hearted atmosphere. "Hannah and I were just discussing who really runs things around here. Everyone knows Hannah runs the show at work," Linda quipped with a grin. "And everyone knows I wear the pants at home. Right, Dave?" "I refuse to answer because no matter what I say, I'll get in trouble," Dave replied smartly. "Wise choice, darling," Linda said. "Besides, Hannah, our relationship is best when neither of us wears the pants." "Wow, guys, TMI," Hannah replied, laughing. "Just seeing you two holding hands, kissing, and making googly eyes at each other is already enough." Blushing slightly, Linda said, "I'm proud that we're still on our honeymoon, even after 17 years of marriage. I'm so lucky in love." Linda's eyes welled up with emotion, her lips trembling into a sweet, crooked smile. Hannah chimed in, "Yes, he's quite adorable. But before you two start getting too mushy, I just wanted to check if I should bring anything." Linda snapped out of her daze and answered, "Thanks for the offer, but we have everything covered. Do we know how many employees and their families will be there tomorrow?" Hannah glanced at her tablet. "Looks like 28 employees, 26 significant others, and 31 children." Linda did some quick math. "Okay, that's 85 people plus our family. The catering company is preparing food for 120, so there's plenty for everyone." Speaking of significant others, Linda turned to Hannah. "Miss Hannah, are you bringing anyone to the party?" Hannah forced a smile. "No, I'm coming alone." "Oh, come on, girl. You're young and gorgeous. We have a friend from church who would be a great match for you." "Linda, don't start with me, please," Hannah said with a strained laugh. Linda opened her mouth to reply, but Dave cut her off. "Sweetheart, let it go. She's a grown woman who can make her own decisions." Linda sighed, reading the unspoken firmness in Dave's tone. "All right, sorry, Hannah. You know it's all out of love, right?" "Yes, I know," Hannah replied softly, but there was so much more she wanted to say, words that remained unspoken. Later that evening, Dave and Linda walked hand in hand through the parking lot, talking about the weekend ahead. They looked forward to one of their favorite traditions. "Did you place the order?" Dave asked. "Of course. Mongolian beef for you, General Tso's chicken for Ellie, and I'll try the happy family," Linda replied. "Perfect. I could have guessed Ellie's order. She always sticks with her favorite." Linda laughed. "Very funny. Look at you. If you keep eating Mongolian beef, you might just turn into a Mongol." "Haha. Did you get different appetizers this time?" "Certainly." A few minutes into their drive home, Linda noticed that Dave, usually chatty, had grown unusually quiet. His gaze was fixed in the distance, and his expression seemed heavy. "Is something wrong, darling?" Linda asked, her voice tinged with concern. Dave shook himself from his thoughts. "Not really," he said hesitantly. "Come on, Dave. Talk to me. We share everything, don't we?" "Of course," he said, forcing a laugh. "I was just thinking about how perfect everything feels. It's like, I'm scared it's too good to last." Linda reached for his hand and gave it a reassuring squeeze. "Don't be silly. Life isn't perfect, but we have each other, and that's enough." Dave nodded, but the unease in his chest didn't go away. He couldn't quite put his finger on it, but something felt off. A movie. Ellie is already 15 and growing up so fast that soon it'll just be the two of us as a little family, Dave said, a hint of melancholy in his voice. "What do you mean, just the two of us? She'll still be our little girl. She'll always be our sweet daughter," Linda replied with a warm smile. "That's true, but in a year or two, our Friday nights will turn into her dates, then college, and soon she'll be living on her own. It'll just be the two of us. It's the curse of parenthood. Darling, children grow up." "I know," Linda said softly, "but I don't have to like it." "Well, look at it this way. When it's just the two of us, we can still have Chinese movie nights," Dave suggested, trying to lift the mood. Linda laughed. "I hadn't thought of that." They drove home with wide smiles, undoubtedly looking forward to the stormy but cozy evening ahead. As Dave and Linda walked through the front door, they were greeted by Ellie's joyful scream as she threw herself into her father's arms with a big hug. Their dog, Banjo, barked happily and wagged his tail, darting toward the bags of food that had fallen to the floor during Ellie's exuberant embrace. "I did it, Dad. I did it. My geometry grade is excellent," Ellie exclaimed. "I told you everything would be fine, didn't I?" Dave said, smiling proudly. "I didn't believe you, but you were right." Ellie kissed his cheek as Linda watched the two of them with pride. She knew Ellie was a daddy's girl and had no problem with that. Linda herself had been just as close to her late father, and she would never deny Ellie the same bond with Dave. Dinner passed in a lively atmosphere filled with energetic conversation, chopsticks waving, and delight in every bite of food. Once they finished and cleared the table, the family headed to the living room for the highlight of Dave's week. "Whose turn is it to choose the movie tonight?" Dave asked. "Mine," Ellie answered. "I picked that old comedy you were talking about, but I haven't seen it yet." Dave laughed. "Old? What? From 2015. I thought you'd pick the next John Wick movie after my choice last week." "Oh God, no!" Linda exclaimed. "No mass murder movies today." Dave smirked. "Ellie, how many people were taken out in the last one?" "Ah, Dad. I stopped counting after 100, Ellie replied with a giggle. "So this week we're watching Robin Hood, Men in Tights. Is that okay?" The three of them settled onto the couch, with Dave in the middle and the two women he loved leaning on his shoulders. The word women stuck in his head. Ellie was only 15, but she was already a young woman. The thought made it hard for him to fully enjoy the evening, as the idea of a future without her under the same roof distracted him. It was his greatest fear, losing these cherished moments. The next morning, Dave's brother Rich and his wife Sonia arrived early to help prepare for the company's big meeting. The large pool area needed work, and everything had to be cleaned and set up. Sonia and Ellie cleaned the inside of the house while Linda, Rich, and Dave worked outside. Dave was clearing leaves from the pool when a familiar tingling sensation hit him. Deciding it was time to take a break, he called out, "Honey, I need to go inside for a minute." "Okay," Linda replied from across the yard. "Just don't stink up the guest bathroom. Ellie just cleaned it, and she'll be horrified." Dave chuckled as he headed inside. He was about to go up to the master bathroom but changed his mind. The basement bathroom seemed like a better option. No risk of contaminating public areas with his infamous morning smells. Entering the small, dimly lit room, the damp, musty scent of the basement greeted him. He opened the small, tall window for ventilation. Dave had a habit of sitting in the dark during these quiet moments, letting his thoughts wander. This morning ritual often lasted 15 minutes or more. As he sat down, he closed his eyes and took in the fresh smells of spring wafting in through the open window. He was lost in his thoughts when faint rustling and whispers caught his attention. The window, hidden from view by thick bushes, was on the side of the house. Dave strained his ears to make out the voices. "Rich, Dave might catch us," a voice said softly. Dave's heart stopped. He immediately recognized Linda's voice. Something began to churn in his stomach. "No, he won't catch us," Rich replied confidently. "He'll be in there for at least 10 minutes. Dave sat frozen, his heart pounding in his chest. "What's so urgent?" Linda asked. "The kids brought home forms from school asking for permission to take DNA samples. Did Ellie's school do that too?" "I don't know," Linda said. "Oh damn. Yes, that's it. Have you found out if I'm Ellie's father?" Dave felt as though a cannonball had struck him in the gut. He fought the urge to gag, trying not to react. "No," Linda continued. "I was really hoping to avoid this. I'll check with the school to see if they're doing anything with DNA. It's a different county, so maybe we're safe," Rich said. "I hope so," Linda replied. "Hey, we haven't met in a while. Don't you think we should stop? It's too risky. We've been running from this for years. Besides, I don't want to stop. And I'm sure you don't want Dave to find out either," Rich countered. "Would you really tell him? It would destroy you too. Do you want to take that chance?" Linda asked. Rich let out a small, bitter laugh. "I can always start over somewhere else. You're a real idiot, you know?" "Yes, so what? Pick a day this week." Linda shot back, her voice full of frustration. Dave sat paralyzed in the dark bathroom, his mind spinning. The world he thought he knew was collapsing around him. Dave and Ellie spend every Tuesday night together, and they don't get home until 10 p.m. "How about meeting at Valley View at 6 p.m.? Linda suggested. "Okay, agreed. Let's go back. Let me know what the school says," Rich responded. After they left, Dave stood up and closed the window just in time to throw up in the toilet. He barely managed to sit up before he lost consciousness. Silent tears streamed down his face as he whispered to himself over and over, "What should I do? What should I do?" His thoughts spiraled in every direction. He had never experienced such excruciating pain before. His chest felt tight, as if it were being crushed, and it was as though his insides were being torn apart. "Oh God! Am I having a heart attack?" Dave wondered briefly, but he quickly dismissed the thought. The pain wasn't subsiding, but he knew it wasn't a physical ailment. This was something far worse. After a few minutes, he felt slightly stronger. He tried to straighten himself up, fighting against the terrible thoughts that swirled through his mind. "Ellie Ogu, Ellie. Is she mine?" The horror of that thought caused panic to swell in his chest until another realization hit him. No matter who her biological father was, she was his daughter in every way that mattered. That thought offered a fleeting sense of comfort, but the possibility that Rich might be her father filled him with rage. If it's true, Rich will regret ever being born, Dave thought bitterly. He struggled to process what he had overheard. Who is Linda? I can't believe this. He forced himself to pull it together. He needed time to think, to figure out how to handle the situation. He couldn't face them now, not with over 100 guests arriving soon for the party. Somehow, he had to find a way to act normal, even though he was a terrible actor and his thoughts were always transparent to those who knew him well. Realizing he had been hiding in the basement for almost 20 minutes, Dave knew he had to come out. What should I do? He muttered to himself, his mind still racing. Then an idea struck him. Ice. Saying aloud to no one, "Ice." He realized that leaving the house to buy ice would give him precious time to compose himself. He splashed his face with water, doing his best to hide any signs of distress, and headed upstairs. As he emerged from the basement, he spotted Sonia. "Sonia, if you see Linda, can you tell her I'm running out to get some ice?" he said, trying to sound casual. "Of course," Sonia answered cheerfully, completely unaware that her own world would soon collapse. Dave parked in front of the store but didn't go in right away. Instead, he decided to walk around for a bit to clear his head. Walking had always helped him think. Tears welled up in his eyes again, and he angrily muttered, "Enough! Enough!" Dave had never been an emotional person, and the fact that he couldn't control himself now infuriated him. He needed to get a grip and think clearly. He needed a plan. Something to get him through the party and the days that followed without anyone realizing there was a problem. The walk eventually calmed him, and his thoughts began to flow in a more productive direction. Slowly, a strategy started to form in his mind. Realizing he had been away from home for too long, he went into the store, bought 8 large bags of ice, and drove home to begin the first act of the tragedy in which he now found himself. To his relief, Ellie was the first to see him when he arrived. She rushed over, concern written all over her face. "Dad, what's wrong? You look terrible," she said. "My stomach," Dave said, feigning exhaustion. "I had to pull over because I was throwing up. Can you move the ice from the car to the large freezer? I need to lie down." "Of course. I'll tell Mom you're not feeling well," Ellie replied, clearly worried. "Thank you, dear," Dave said, grateful for the brief reprieve. He hoped that a few hours alone would give him time to regain his strength and prepare himself mentally. There was no better alibi than an upset stomach. As he lay in bed, he heard footsteps approaching. Quickly, he curled up, pretending to be in more discomfort than he actually was. Linda opened the door, her face filled with concern. "Honey, Ellie said you weren't feeling well. What's going on?" "I don't know," Dave said weakly. "I don't think I have a fever, but my stomach is tight, and I've already vomited." "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry," Linda said gently. "Look, we have everything under control at the party, so just rest for a while. If you feel better, come down later. But if you miss the party, I'm sure our guests will understand." "I don't want to miss it," Dave replied. "But thanks for understanding." Linda kissed his forehead and discreetly checked for a fever. To his relief, she didn't linger and quietly left the room. Once she was gone, Dave started pacing the room again. His logical mind began to piece together a more detailed plan. Divorce was inevitable, there was no doubt about that. Rich and Linda would both have to be cut out of his life completely. The company's future without them would need to be secured, which meant he had to prepare for the fallout both personally and professionally. He thought about Sonia and her sons. They were innocent bystanders in this mess. and he resolved to do whatever he could to protect them. His parents would also need careful handling to avoid breaking their hearts. And then there was Ellie. Whether she was biologically his or not, Dave vowed to protect her at all costs. He believed she would want to stay with him, but he couldn't be sure. The thought of losing his relationship with her was unbearable. As he stood there, battling waves of fear and anger, he felt tears threatening to return. He clenched his fists and forced himself to hold them back. Just as he began to regain his composure, there was a soft knock on the door. Ellie chose this moment to visit him. Dave heard her bounding up the steps, so he quickly lay down, pretending to be asleep. Once again, his acting skills failed him. Her gentle hand stroked his hair near his ear. "Dad, are you okay?" she asked softly. "I don't know, honey. I just want to try to get a few more hours of sleep before the guests arrive," he replied weakly. Their dog, Banjo, jumped onto the bed and began lovingly licking Dave's face. Dave let him continue, not only because he loved his dog's affection but also because it conveniently wiped away any accidental tears. "Hey, buddy," Dave said, greeting his furry companion and hugging him tightly. "I love you, Dad. I hope you're feeling better. Okay?" Ellie said with genuine concern. "Thanks, babe. I love you too," Dave replied. Since he had turned his back to her to hide his face, Ellie had to lean down from behind to kiss his forehead. Feeling her love, a pleasant shiver ran through his body, as if physically confirming how much he loved his daughter. In that moment, Dave realized he was making the right decision regarding the dilemma he was facing. Ellie needed to know the whole truth before any confrontation with Linda or Rich. He knew when and how to tell her, but he hated the necessity of it. What were Linda and Rich thinking? He wondered bitterly. It seemed impossible to comprehend their cruel betrayal. Now he had to detonate a bomb within his family, exposing their actions. The blessings he had enjoyed less than 24 hours ago, his perfect life, were now painful memories, tainted by the bitter taste of betrayal. Quietly, Dave let his anger surface. "Damn them. Damn their nasty asses," he muttered to himself. Throughout the day, Dave managed to remain social with the guests. Luckily, Linda and Rich were both too busy to interact much with him. However, Hannah kept giving him curious glances, as though she could sense something was wrong. She didn't say anything, though. Dave stayed close to Ellie, both to comfort himself by being near her and to draw strength from her presence. She noticed his increased affection but assumed it was due to his lingering poor health. Her watchful gaze gave him the reassurance he needed to maintain his mask and avoid exposing his inner turmoil. After the party ended, Dave helped with the cleaning before announcing that he was going to bed early. His decision to use the guest room that night was met with no resistance from Linda, who had no reason to suspect anything. Dave felt pleased that his plans for the first night had been carried out successfully. The next morning, the entire family went to church. In the middle of the sermon, Dave pretended to feel his phone vibrate and looked down at the screen with a disgusted expression. Linda noticed and gave him a questioning look, to which he whispered. Later, as soon as the service ended, Linda pressed him. "What was that message?" "The owner of GoPro water equipment needs me to meet a big client tomorrow," Dave explained. "He wants me to stay there until dinner, so I'll be back on Tuesday." "Where are they located?" "Pittsburgh," he answered simply. Linda looked at him with concern. "Are you feeling well enough to go? You looked pale yesterday." "Yeah, I'm fine," he assured her. "I'll drive separately so you and Ellie can stay." Dave felt a small sense of satisfaction. He had successfully bought himself 2 or 3 nights to sort things out without Linda or Rich suspecting a thing. At his parents' dinner on Sunday, Dave carefully avoided Rich and kept his distance. Linda stayed busy helping with food and chatting with Sonia, so she didn't notice his unusually reserved behavior. After lunch, Dave left early, stopping at home only briefly to collect the necessary paperwork before driving to a Marriott Courtyard hotel about 5 miles away from the family business. Once checked in and settled, Dave called his lawyer, who was also a close friend and didn't mind taking a call on a Sunday. "Hey Dave, to what do I owe the honor of a Sunday call from my favorite client?" Bill answered. "Bill, I'm sorry to bother you on a Sunday, but I have a serious problem," Dave replied. "Damn, I'm sorry to hear that, mate. Do you want to come over and talk? I've got a few bottles of Yangling Lager with your name on them. You know you're always welcome here." "Thanks, buddy. You're a good friend, and I really need one right now," Dave said, his voice heavy with emotion. When Dave arrived, he and Bill sat down, and Dave recounted everything that had happened. Bill, who had gone through a divorce himself for similar reasons, empathized deeply. As they got into the details of Dave's situation, Bill quickly realized why his legal expertise might be needed, even though he didn't specialize in family law. "It's a smart move to combine business law and family law for this issue," Bill noted. "Do you mind if I bring in my friend? She handled my divorce, and trust me, she's a real shark. You'll want her on your side." "I was hoping you'd have a reference," Dave said. "How soon can we call her in?" "Let me reach out to her right now and see what she can do," Bill said, stepping aside to make the call. He contacted Angela Hall, a fierce family lawyer with a reputation for being particularly ruthless toward cheaters. Bill knew she would give Dave the representation he needed. After a brief conversation, Bill returned with good news. "She's coming and joining us for dinner. Is that okay?" "Wow," Dave said, feeling a glimmer of hope. "I feel special getting this much attention on a Sunday." "Listen, friend," Bill said, placing a hand on Dave's shoulder. "Hearing what your wife and brother did hurts my soul. We'll fix this. I have to say, you and Ellie deserve so much better." Bill laughed as he teased Dave. "Don't start feeling too special. You're paying for dinner. We'll order from Kelly's Steakhouse when Angela gets here. They deliver and they already know my address." "Well, since I can't cook, it's the best option." Angela turned out to be a wonderful woman, and Dave immediately noticed there was more than just friendship between her and Bill. It didn't take long for Bill to confirm Dave's suspicions. "Yes, my friend, this beautiful lady is not available," Bill said with a grin. "Don't think you have a chance, because we're getting married in a month." "Wow, that's great," Dave replied, trying to muster some enthusiasm. "I could say a lot of sarcastic jokes, but my mood is throwing off my filters, and I don't want to seem rude." "Relax, Dave. I already know I don't deserve this wonderful woman," Bill said, laughing as he glanced at Angela. The three spent the evening reviewing strategy and planning their actions. Angela took Dave's financial documents and scheduled an appointment for Monday afternoon to finalize the details. Everything was set to ensure that by Friday, Dave would be ready to file for divorce. At one point, they took a break so Dave could make a phone call home, pretending to be in Pittsburgh. "Hello, dear," Linda answered. "I assume you've arrived. How are you feeling?" "A little tired, but okay. I quickly ate a burger and went to bed," Dave said, keeping his tone casual. "Is Ellie around?" "Yes, she's right here watching TV. Let me put it on speakerphone." A minute passed as Linda handed the phone to their daughter. "Hi, Dad. I miss you," Ellie said cheerfully. "I miss you too, honey. I just wanted to let you know I'll be home in time for our Tuesday night plans." "Oh, good. I was afraid you'd let me down." "Never, honey. Dinner at a restaurant and a movie. It's a promise. You pick the movie, and we'll start around 7:30. Okay." "Certainly. Okay, guys, I'm gonna bed now. Love you both." After a chorus of "Love you" from Linda and Ellie, the conversation ended. Linda felt a little disappointed that they hadn't talked longer, but figured the long drive must have left Dave exhausted. Back in his hotel room, Dave opened the window, hoping the fresh air would soothe his soul. Instead, the strong odor from the dumpster below wafted in, making him wince. "Appropriate," he muttered to himself, reflecting bitterly on the rotting mess his life had become. He slammed the window shut, threw himself onto the bed, and spent the night haunted by the nightmare in which he now lived. The meeting with Bill and Angela went well, and the evening call home was short and sweet. Dave claimed he had clients waiting for dinner, but in reality, he sat in his hotel room eating a burger from room service while reviewing his strategy for the next day. Tomorrow he would have to bring Ellie up to speed. This would be the day she would learn about the darker side of life. This was the day he dreaded most. On Tuesday morning, Dave finalized a few more points of his strategy. He met with Angela and Bill one last time to finalize the details of the divorce filing and the severance package he planned to offer Linda and Rich. After lunch, Dave returned to the office, timing his arrival to make it seem as though he had just returned from Pittsburgh. Seeing Hannah caused a surge of emotions he thought he had under control. Instead of immediately calling her into his office, he greeted her with a hesitant smile and closed his door behind him. "Pull yourself together," he whispered to himself. Having a list of actions in front of him was his crutch to stay composed. Taking out his notepad, he reviewed his plan, took a deep breath, and called his trusted office manager into the office. "Hi, Dave," Hannah said with her usual smile, but it quickly disappeared when she saw the expression on his face. A few silent tears rolled down Dave's cheeks. He couldn't control them, and it seemed he didn't want to. "Oh my God, what happened? Are you okay?" Hannah asked, breaking all office protocol as she rushed to hug him. "Dave, what happened? Are you sick? Please talk to me." "No," he answered in a trembling voice. "I'm not sick. Nobody is sick." Hannah pulled a chair closer to him and took his hand, stroking his arm as she sat next to him. Damn it." Dave interrupted himself, grabbing a napkin as he fought to regain his composure. "We need to make some changes here. I think they'll be good in the long run, but the reason they're needed is really, really disgusting." What happened?" Hannah asked, her voice filled with concern. Dave looked at her with the saddest eyes she had ever seen. His swollen, red eyes betrayed the depth of his pain. She realized only one thing could shake him so profoundly. "Linda. Is there something wrong with Linda?" He nodded, struggling for words. Lowering his head and looking away, he croaked a single word. "Treason." "Oh my God, Linda?" Hannah gasped, hugging him again as she saw him begin to lose his composure. "I can't believe it. Are you sure? Do you know who?" Dave nodded, clearly trying to muster the strength to say the name. Hannah waited patiently. Finally, he looked up, and his expression shifted from overwhelming sadness to seething anger. "Rich," he said bitterly. "My own brother." Hannah suddenly jumped up, pacing back and forth in disbelief. "That son of a—" Hannah blurted out, trying not to speak too loudly. "That stupid, selfish idiot." She continued pacing back and forth, attempting to process the depth of her boss's suffering. After a few moments, she calmed down and hugged the broken man again. Suddenly, a realization hit her, and she looked into his eyes. "You found out right before the party, didn't you?" Dave sighed, his voice low. "How did you guess?" "I felt like something was off. And honestly, I didn't believe the upset stomach excuse," she admitted. "I overheard their conversation and immediately threw up," Dave confessed. So technically, the upset stomach story was partly true. And no, I wasn't really in Pittsburgh yesterday. Lawyers? Hannah asked tentatively. Yes, Dave replied. Is there any chance you'll end up staying with her? I prayed to find a way, Dave said, his voice trembling. But they dated for 16 years or more. I can't get over it. I'll never see her the same way again, as the woman I loved. Hannah walked to the refrigerator in Dave's office, grabbed a Coca-Cola, and pulled out 2 glasses and a bottle of rum from the cabinet. I think we both need a rum and Coke. What do you think? She asked. I think it's a great idea, Dave replied. Hannah handed him a glass and collapsed into the chair opposite him. They sat in silence for a while, sipping their drinks and looking at each other, before Dave began to discuss business matters. It's clear that after Friday, they're both fired, Dave started. Agreed, Hannah replied. Rich's wife, Sonia, has a business background. I want to see if she can take Linda's place, but we won't discuss that until next week. In the meantime, you may have to take over Linda's duties for a while. I can handle it, Hannah said confidently. I know her job and I can do it. I hope it won't be too long. I don't want to overwhelm you, Dave added. No problem. I've got strong shoulders, she reassured him. What about sales? Dave asked. Debbie Gleon recently mentioned she wanted to transition into sales. She's done an excellent job supporting Rich internally, and I think she'll be great, Hannah suggested. I agree. The hard part will be finding a replacement for Debbie, Dave noted. Tammy Fields could be an option. She's worked in systems development, helped with purchasing, and has taken a lot of business courses. I think she could fit in easily, Hannah proposed. Okay, sounds good. What's the timeline? Dave asked. This Friday, Hannah confirmed. As soon as they're ready to leave, tell them you and I have been discussing expanding the sales department and want to get their input. Make it sound like a big deal and let them know it's confidential. Then we can meet with them on Monday morning to offer the promotion. Got it. What else? Before Monday, can you draft job descriptions for their new roles? I'll discuss the pay terms when we meet with them, Dave instructed. Yes. Anything else? A few more tears rolled down Dave's face. This may be the hardest part yet. You're one of my closest friends, Hannah. And now I'm losing Linda, my best friend. I apologize in advance if I have to lean on you even more. Hannah stood and walked over to him, hugging him tightly as he rose from his chair. It will be the easiest task and the greatest honor, she said softly. Hannah left his office, her heart aching for him. Dave was too good a man to suffer like this. She couldn't help but feel his pain. Meanwhile, Linda aimlessly paced the now clean kitchen, pretending to be busy. She hadn't been intimate with Rich for almost a year and struggled to understand why she had kept giving in to him before that. She didn't love him. The intimacy was dull and unsatisfying. After their brief conversation in the garden on Saturday, Linda had decided she would stop the stupidity, for good after that last time. She doubted Rich would ever tell Dave, as he had just as much to lose as she did. But she couldn't understand herself. Why had she risked everything she loved for something so meaningless? In retrospect, she thought she should have confessed years ago. Instead, she had jeopardized her family for a reckless, senseless act. Her thoughts were interrupted when Dave entered through the side door. She threw herself into his arms and kissed him passionately. He seemed surprised, almost resistant. "What's this about?" he asked, his voice laced with confusion. "I love you so much, and I've just missed us together. Since the picnic," she said, her voice shaky. "I missed you too, honey," Dave lied. "Are you ready for your big date with Ellie?" Linda asked, trying to sound lighthearted. "Certainly," Dave replied. He wondered darkly what would happen if he asked her if she was ready to date Rich. "She's getting ready and should be down in a minute," What do you have planned for the evening? Linda continued. I'm taking her to Vincent's Italian restaurant and then to a movie of her choice. Do you have any plans for the evening? Dave asked, studying her closely. Linda flinched slightly. Not really. Thought I'd just go shopping. We don't need windows, Dave joked dryly, trying to hide his frustration. Very funny. Just going to see if there's anything worthwhile on sale, Linda replied, her voice tight. Well, happy shopping, Dave said, regretting the words as soon as they left his mouth. What's that supposed to mean? Linda asked, her tone defensive. What? Oh, nothing. Just trying to be funny, Dave said dismissively, noting the strange twitch in her eyelid. Luckily, Ellie came bounding down the stairs, breaking the awkward tension. Dad! Ellie shouted with her usual joy, throwing herself into his arms. She was dressed in her Sunday best and looked much older than he was willing to admit. She was growing up too fast, and today's discussion would make her grow up even faster. This was the day. He dreaded this conversation with all his heart. Baby, are you ready to paint the town? Dave asked, trying to sound cheerful. Paint the town? What does that even mean? Ellie responded, confused. It just means to have a good time, he explained. Oh, then yes, especially with my favorite guy, Ellie said with a warm smile. As they left the house, Linda stood in the doorway watching them go. She was overcome with a mix of pride and love for Dave and Ellie, but guilt and remorse soon began to take over. After tonight, Rich and I are definitely done, she thought to herself. She waited 20 minutes before grabbing her keys and heading off to meet her longtime lover. As Dave drove away from the house, a tightness grew in his chest. He took a few deep breaths and nervously reached over to take Ellie's hand. Honey, I need to apologize in advance about tonight, he said hesitantly. Apologize? For what? Ellie asked, frowning. We won't be able to have a fancy dinner or watch a movie tonight. I need to talk to you about some serious things and show you something, Dave admitted. Ellie's lips quivered, and tears began to form in her eyes. Dad, are you sick or something? No, baby, Dave said quickly. We'll stop for dinner at Chick-fil-A, and then we'll go somewhere and talk. Fine, Ellie replied reluctantly. But why can't you just tell me now? Is this some kind of secret from Mom? You're scaring me. There's nothing to be afraid of, baby, Dave reassured her. It'll just be easier to explain when we get there. Okay, Ellie said softly. But drive carefully, please. The car fell into silence for several minutes as they drove. Eventually, they pulled into the parking lot of a Chick-fil-A. After ordering chicken strips, they got back on the road. Baby, come on, eat while we drive, Dave encouraged her gently. Ellie ate quietly, the weight of her father's tone keeping her on edge. The car remained mostly silent as they drove for another 15 minutes. Finally, Dave pulled into a small office complex across from the Valley View Motel. Okay, Dad, we're parked. What's happening? Why did we come here? Ellie asked nervously. Dave looked at his daughter, her innocent face staring back at him, and felt his heart break. He struggled to find the words, his hands trembling. Honey, damn, sorry, this is hard, Dave stammered. Ellie reached over, taking his hand and forcing herself to smile. It's okay, Dad. Tell me. Dave took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. Your mom. She's having an affair. This has been going on for a long time. Ellie's hand slipped away from his as she pulled back, her face contorting in pain. No, this can't be, Ellie said, shaking her head. Mom would never. I thought the same thing, Dave said softly. It's like I never knew her. That's why we're here. She's supposed to meet him here in about 10 minutes. Ellie's face twisted in disbelief. Meet? Meet with whom? We'll find out soon, baby, Dave said, his voice heavy with sorrow. Ellie began to cry, burying her face in her father's shoulder and wrapping her arms tightly around his neck. This can't be true. You must be mistaken, she sobbed. Her stream of denials and tears tore at Dave's heart, but his attention was drawn to two cars pulling into the motel parking lot. Ellie noticed his gaze shift and sat up. Following his line of sight, she saw her mother stepping out of one car. Then, to her utter shock, she saw her Uncle Rich get out of the other. Ellie's face froze in disbelief as she turned to look at her father. Tears were streaming down Dave's face. Ellie's heart broke for him. She hugged him as tightly as she could, crying uncontrollably in the cramped car seat. She felt her father shift slightly and saw that he was trying to take photos of the scene across the street. They both watched as Linda and Rich embraced briefly before entering room 103 together. Dave turned to Ellie and gently cupped her chin, forcing her to look at him. "I'm so sorry, darling," he said, his voice thick with emotion as he wiped the tears from her cheeks. "I'm so sorry." Ellie's sobs continued as she buried her face in her hands. They sat in the car, holding each other for support as they tried to process what they had seen. After a few minutes, Ellie sat up straight, her face pale but resolute. "This will destroy our family, won't it?" "Yes, honey," Dave admitted. "The three of us, Uncle Rich, Aunt Sonia, will all be affected by this." Ellie's voice hardened. "I'll stay with you no matter what. I don't want anything to do with her." Dave's heart broke further at her words. "I'll do whatever it takes to keep you with me, darling. But you need to understand that this will be a long, difficult road. And even though you don't want to hear it, someday you'll have to talk to her." Ellie shook her head angrily. "If she tries to force me to stay with her, I'll make her life so miserable that she'll have no choice but to let me go. Count on it." Dave sighed. He wished he could tell her that eventually, she might need to repair her relationship with Linda. But now wasn't the time. The wounds were too fresh, the betrayal too raw. "Ellie," Dave said gently, "the hardest part will be the next few days. I'll confront your mom on Friday night. Until then, we need to carry on as normally as possible. Can you do that?" Ellie started crying again. "I don't know how, Dad. How can I do this?" "We'll figure it out together," Dave said, his voice full of determination. "Let's go somewhere we can talk about the plan." He drove them to a deserted county park, where the streetlights flickered on as the sun dipped below the horizon. There, in the quiet darkness, they talked, planned, cried, screamed, and bonded in a way they never had before. It became clear to both of them that it was now them against the world. They returned home a little after 10 p.m. Ellie, exhausted from the emotional turmoil, wasn't sure she could keep her composure for 3 whole days. "Dad," she said softly, "I don't think I can see her without slapping her." "Watch your language, dear," Dave replied gently. "I know you're angry, but we have to handle this carefully. Eventually, you'll need to talk to her. But for now, just focus on staying strong." Ellie nodded reluctantly. "I'll try, Dad, but it's so hard." "You're stronger than you think, Ellie," Dave said, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "I will never have a normal relationship with her again," Ellie said firmly. "Things will never be the same. I will never be able to respect her again." Dave sighed deeply. "Okay, let's stick to the plan. That should take the pressure off having to act normal. When we get home, just pretend you're really tired and go straight to bed." "I can do that," Ellie agreed, though her voice was shaky. She paused for a moment, collecting her thoughts, and then looked at her father. "Dad, I love you so much. I don't know how you're coping with what she's done, but I'm here with you." Dave smiled sadly, his hands gripping the wheel. How could a loser like me get such a wonderful daughter? Ellie reached over and took his hand. You're far from a loser, Dad. You're the best man I know, and the best a daughter could ask for. When they quietly entered the house, they were relieved to see that Linda had already gone to bed. This gave Ellie the chance to gather her thoughts without confrontation. That night, Dave and Ellie lay in their respective beds, back to back, each pretending to sleep, their minds filled with swirling thoughts and silent tears. Dave woke up from a restless sleep, the smell of coffee drawing him out of bed. He got up, washed, dressed, and packed his suitcase for the 2-day trip he had planned to the other side of the city. Before heading downstairs, he stopped by Ellie's room to check if she was ready. She greeted him with a quiet smile and a small nod. Downstairs, he found Linda in the kitchen making pancakes. She turned to him with a wide smile. "Good morning, dear. Breakfast is almost ready," she said warmly. Dave hugged her from behind and kissed her neck, maintaining the facade as planned. As scheduled, Ellie came downstairs just in time. "Good morning, parents," she said with forced cheerfulness. "Good morning, baby," Linda replied. "Did you have a good evening with this handsome guy?" "Of course," Ellie said with a smile. "Hey, Dad, have you told her yet?" Linda turned to Dave with a questioning look. "Told me what?" Dave played along smoothly. "I need to go back to Pittsburgh today, and I won't be back until Friday. I mentioned it to Ellie last night, and she begged me to take her with me." "Of course," Linda answered happily. "Ellie will make your trip much more enjoyable." "Great!" Ellie exclaimed. I quickly packed. It didn't take me long. Breakfast ended quickly with little conversation. Ellie hurried upstairs to grab her things, and Dave went to his home office to collect the documents he needed. As Ellie and Dave got into the car, both let out a sigh of relief. "How did I do, Dad?" Ellie asked. "Perfect," Dave replied with a small smile. "Your idea to come with me was brilliant. Now neither of us has to worry about pretending to act normal." Ellie grinned faintly. "You mean because our acting skills are bad, right?" "Exactly," Dave chuckled. Ellie grew serious for a moment. "Dad, have you thought about what will happen when I'm there with you? When you confront Mom?" "I'm still not sure, honey," Dave admitted. "Well, I want to be there. And when you deal with Uncle Rich, too," Ellie said firmly. "Watch your language," Dave warned gently. "Sorry," Ellie muttered. "This whole situation just seems like it deserves a ton of swearing." Dave couldn't help but smile, admiring her strength of character. A question occurred to him. "If you're there, what will you say?" "I'm not sure," Ellie replied thoughtfully. "I think I'll just follow my feelings in the moment. But one thing's for sure. She'll know exactly how I feel and which side I'm on. I want her to know that she can't hide who she really is from me." They stopped at a hotel on the other side of town and took the elevator up to their room. Ellie was unusually quiet as she stared at the floor of the elevator. After a moment, she asked her father softly, "When do you think their affair began?" "I'm not sure," Dave replied honestly. "But it's been a while." The discussion continued in their room, where they spent time planning their next steps. It was a day when Ellie had to grow up quickly, learning about the darker sides of life that she and her father would now have to endure together. She looked up at her father with tears in her eyes. "You don't think?" she began, but Dave interrupted her gently. "I know what you want to ask, baby. I don't know. But the answer won't change anything between us." Ellie nodded, her tears spilling over as they embraced. As they unpacked, Ellie hesitated before continuing the conversation. Do you want to know?" Dave paused, unsure of how to answer. "I don't know, dear. What about you?"
Ellie sighed.
"I know who my dad is. It's you. But maybe it would be smart to find out." It's just, well, it's bad enough being the daughter of one cheating man. I don't know if I can handle it if it turns out I'm the daughter of two selfish idiots. Dave's heart ached at her words. So you want to know? I think so, Ellie said softly. It feels like this question is hanging over me like an axe. Maybe we can wait a couple of months, Dave suggested. I have my reasons for wanting to hold off for now. Ellie nodded, responding with a tearful hug before they resumed unpacking. During their stay at the hotel, Dave continued to meet with his lawyers and work on his plan, while Ellie spent time swimming at the pool or reading in the sun. On the first day, Hannah came to the hotel to discuss strategy and joined them for dinner. Ellie and Hannah quickly hit it off, their shared concern for Dave forming a natural bond between them. After dinner, back in their room, Ellie decided to express her thoughts openly. Dad, you know Hannah has warm feelings for you, right? She asked, smiling slyly. What? You think so? Dave replied, caught off guard. Yes, Ellie said confidently. And I think you really like her too. Nothing has ever, happened between us, Dave stammered. I know, Dad, but maybe it should, Ellie said with a knowing smile. Dave couldn't help but laugh softly. Let's focus on one disaster at a time, okay? Ellie smiled back, feeling closer to her father than ever before. Dave stepped back, a look of surprise crossing his face. I hope you know me better than that. I would never cheat on your mom, he said firmly. Tears welled up in Ellie's eyes, and she threw herself into his arms. Oh, Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't mean, I know it's not like you. I shouldn't have asked. I'm so sorry. Dave's heart melted as he held her close. Honey, your mother really turned our world upside down. I think it's natural to doubt if someone is who they say they are when a parent isn't the person you thought they were. But rest assured, I am the man you know. I loved your mother with everything I had, and I would never cheat on her or anyone else. Still holding back tears, Ellie asked the question that had been on both of their minds. Then why did she do it? I don't know, baby. I just don't know, Dave said, his voice breaking. Hopefully, we'll find out on Friday. I'm sorry I said that, Dad. I know how good you are. I'm sorry. You don't need to apologize for asking what's on your mind. You just caught me off guard. Dave reassured her. The warm light of Ellie's presence returned to Dave's heart. Her care for him, her unwavering love, and her maturity reminded him that she was his only real support through this storm. He almost forgot that she, too, had a lot to process and endure. The next day, Hannah called Linda while she worked from her home office. Hi, Linda. How are you? Hi, Hannah. I'm good. How about you? Couldn't be better, Hannah replied cheerfully. How's the end of the month going? Almost finished. Why do you ask? Well, are you planning to come into the office tomorrow? Our tech guy will need your laptop for the weekend to update the software and check for network viruses. I plan to be there all day, Linda answered. I need to catch up on some files. Great. See you tomorrow, and don't forget to bring your laptop. Maybe we can have lunch together, considering your usual lunch partner is out of town. Sounds good. See you then, Linda replied. Hannah breathed a sigh of relief after hanging up. She knew Linda's life was about to change dramatically. Despite everything, a part of her felt sympathy for Linda and her family. But deep inside, in a place she had spent years trying to suppress, Hannah also felt a small glimmer of hope. Hope for Dave and Ellie, and maybe even for herself. Friday arrived, the day that was destined to change everything. Ellie woke up and rubbed her eyes. She looked across the room and saw her father standing by the window, a cup of coffee in his hand. He was staring outside at something in the distance, a few tears rolling down his cheeks. Dad, are you okay? Ellie asked softly. Dave turned to her, forcing a small smile. He walked over to her bed and sat down on the edge, gently brushing her hair away from her face and kissing her forehead. "Am I okay?" "Not really," he admitted. "What about you? Are you ready for a really bad day?" Ellie sighed deeply. "Yes. There's no choice, is there?" "What do you mean, baby? You can't forgive her and stay, can you?" Dave's shoulders slumped. "I would if I could. I've struggled every minute since I found out, asking myself that same question. But after all these years, years of secrecy, lies, and pretending to be loving and faithful, I just can't see her as the same woman I loved and married. If it were a random, isolated incident, maybe I could find a way to forgive her. But this, it's more than that." They hugged each other tightly, drawing strength from one another. Ellie whispered in his ear, "Thanks for including me. I'm glad I know what's going on. I'm not sure I could handle waking up tomorrow and suddenly finding out everything." Dave pulled back slightly and looked into her teary eyes. "Baby, some people might think it's wrong for me to share all of this with you, to include you in everything. But I really needed your support. And for a 15-year-old, your maturity is incredible. Are you okay with all of this?" Ellie smiled weakly. "With my dad by my side, I'm fine." "Then I'm good too," Dave said, smiling back. "What do you say we start this storm?" "Language, Dad." "Sorry, baby." After a light breakfast, which neither of them had much appetite for, they showered, packed their things, and checked out of the hotel. They drove to the lawyer's office and were relieved to see both Bill and Angela waiting for them. Dave's legal team spent a lot of time talking to Ellie and were clearly impressed by the young lady's calm and collected demeanor. The four of them reviewed the divorce papers and other documents, ensuring everything was in place. Ellie was fully engaged in the discussions, passionately contributing ideas and asking thoughtful questions. At one point, Angela couldn't help but comment, "Ellie, you seem to have a natural understanding for this kind of work. You're sharp and articulate. Have you ever thought about a career in law?" Ellie smiled. "Actually, I have. Law really interests me. Those are my favorite TV shows, of course." Bill chuckled. "Well, just so you know, the practice of law is a lot different from what you see on television." "Oh, I'm sure," Ellie said, nodding. "But I still think it's something I'd like to pursue." Angela leaned forward with a thoughtful look. "I have an idea. When you're older, if you're still interested, maybe you'd like to work with me and help our paralegal team. It would give you some real insight into the profession." "That would be amazing," Ellie said excitedly. Watching Ellie interact with Bill and Angela filled Dave with pride. Despite everything she had been through, she remained composed and engaged. It gave him confidence that she was strong enough to weather this storm. After enjoying a light lunch together, Dave and Ellie ran a few last-minute errands before returning home. They arrived about half an hour before 3:30 p.m., the weight of what was about to happen pressing heavily on them. As they walked into the house, the reality of the confrontation ahead was almost unbearable. But together, they braced themselves for the moment that would change their lives forever. The awkward silence in the house added to the tension. Dave was organizing the evidence and documents on the dining room table. To pass the time, he convinced Ellie to play cribbage, though neither of them could focus. They had just an hour before their family would be irrevocably broken. The sound of the garage door opening startled them both. Ellie and Dave exchanged a glance before silently taking their seats at the table. There was no more pretense, no more masks. Everything was about to become very, very real. Linda walked through the front door, her arms full of takeout bags. "Chinese food is here. Let's get the party started," she said cheerfully. But then her gaze fell on the grim faces of her daughter and husband, sitting stiffly at the table. Her smile faded. "Hey, you two. What's wrong?" Quietly but firmly, Dave said, "Sit down, Linda." Her steps faltered, and her heart sank at the tone of his voice. Slowly, she walked to the table and sat down, the bag still in her hands. Her eyes scanned the table and froze when they landed on a photograph. Evidence of her Tuesday night meeting with Rich. The blood drained from her face. She dropped the bags and almost collapsed into the chair. Tears welled up in her eyes as she covered her face with trembling hands. "No, no, no," she whispered repeatedly, her voice breaking with every word. When she finally composed herself enough to look up, she saw the two people she loved most staring back at her with cold, piercing eyes. The intense look on their faces expressed the depth of their contempt and pain. "Please, Dave," Linda sobbed. "Don't do this. Don't throw me away. I deserve it, but please don't." She grabbed a tissue from the box neatly placed on the table and wiped at her tears, though it did little to clear her vision. After a long silence, Dave spoke softly but with an edge in his voice. "What do you think you deserve?" Linda sobbed harder. "Please don't leave me. Don't throw me away," she begged. "You mean how you threw away our marriage? Our family?" Dave asked, his tone filled with quiet rage. "Oh God, Linda, please tell me it was just a mistake. Please." "It was," she cried. "It was a terrible, selfish mistake." Dave's expression didn't soften. "How long did this mistake, as you call it, last?" Linda hesitated, wondering if she could avoid answering. She wasn't sure how much Dave already knew and decided to tread carefully. "It doesn't matter. Once was enough. Please, Dave, can't we just move past this?" "It doesn't matter?" Dave's voice rose sharply, his anger finally breaking through. Linda flinched at the sound, realizing there was no hiding the truth now. "How long, Linda?" he demanded. She lowered her head, resting her elbows on the table and pressing her forehead into her hands. She couldn't bring herself to look at him or Ellie. It started just before he met Sonia," she admitted, her voice barely audible. Dave let out a bitter laugh. "I see. So, about 17 years, I guess. 17 years of cheating on me doesn't matter to you? Is that what you're saying?" "No, of course it matters," Linda cried. "It was terrible, selfish, and painful. I hate myself for it." Ellie couldn't hold back any longer. "Come on, Mom. How could you do this? Do you even understand how much you've destroyed Dad and me?" Dave suddenly stood, slamming his hands on the table. "Who the hell are you, Linda? What the hell are you?" Ellie jumped in, her voice full of venom. "I think I know. Harlot, cheater, liar, traitor. Oh, and let's not forget, Mom." Linda was on the verge of hysteria, her body trembling. The weight of their words was crushing her, and her body threatened to betray her with the overwhelming tension. "Please don't call me that," Linda begged through her tears. "Dave, please, tell her not to say things like that," she pleaded, turning to him for some shred of support. "When she says something that isn't true, I'll correct her," Dave replied coldly. The family fell silent, except for Linda's quiet sobbing. After a few moments, she gathered the courage to ask the question weighing most heavily on her heart, even though she already knew the answer would destroy her. "What are you going to do?" she whispered. Dave's voice was firm and unemotional. "Go upstairs, clean yourself up, and calm down. Your crying is only annoying us. Then come back down, and we'll talk for a few minutes before Ellie and I leave. But we need to fix this." "Where are you going?" "It's none of your business," Dave replied sharply. "And there's no way in hell this can be fixed in a few hours. Go upstairs. Now." Linda staggered up the stairs, her legs barely able to carry her. As soon as she was out of sight, Dave sent a quick message to Linda's sister, Shelley. "Shelley, She needs you. Shelley responded almost immediately. I'll be there in 30 minutes. Great. We won't leave until you get here. Just come in. Linda sat on the edge of her bed, letting her emotions completely take over. She sobbed uncontrollably for the first 5 minutes, the sheer weight of her actions crushing her. Eventually, the tears subsided, leaving her with cold, numbing thoughts. She began to think of ways to keep her family together, but deep down, she knew it was futile. As she laid her head down on the bed, the realization hit her like a brick wall. This wasn't her bed anymore. This wasn't her home. She had destroyed everything for nothing. A fresh wave of tears came, and Linda let them flow freely. 20 minutes later, Linda came back downstairs. Though still clearly distressed, she had managed to compose herself enough to sit quietly at the table, looking modest and subdued. She was relieved that Ellie wasn't present for this part of the conversation. She waited for Dave to speak first. First of all, Dave began coldly. I think you already understand that you're fired. Linda's tears returned instantly. Why? I'm good at my job. Why fire me? Do you really need to ask? Dave replied sharply. I don't know who you are anymore, or if I can even trust you. Plus, frankly, I don't want you around. Linda looked down, trying to compose herself. After a moment, she asked, What else? Dave slid an envelope across the table. Here are the documents I'm sure you were expecting. The envelope includes your compensation package and the agreement. Open your own bank account with the check inside. Dave pushed the envelope of documents toward Linda. Study them carefully. You should probably hire a lawyer. I'll cover the initial expenses, but if you dispute anything, it will be at your expense. This seems so cruel, Linda whispered, her voice trembling. This isn't like you, Dave. Can't we try to fix this? Ignoring her plea, Dave continued. Shelley will be here soon to support you. I strongly suggest you go with her for a week or so because I'm not ready to talk. When we're both ready, you can come back here to the guest room until more permanent arrangements are made. Linda's voice broke as she asked, Can't I just stay here? Damn it, Linda, Dave shouted, his voice shaking with anger. I really don't want to see your face for a while. The last sentence hit Linda like a knife to the chest. She froze, the words cutting deeper than she thought possible. After a moment, she dared to ask the question she feared the most. Have you decided yet? Isn't there a chance for us? Dave's face was hard, his tone cold. I don't see a way to overcome this, Linda. 17 years. 17 years of lying and betrayal with my own brother. You've completely destroyed 2 marriages and 3 families. Ours, Sonia and Rich's, and my parents. My brother is dead to me now. Linda's face crumpled as the gravity of her actions sank in deeper. Oh God, she whispered, clutching her chest. Oh God, forgive me. Please forgive me. I'm sure God will forgive you, Dave said bitterly. As for me, maybe the coming years will force me to be more lenient. But not today. Just then, Shelley walked in, her timing perfect. Dave turned to hug her tightly before calling Ellie down from her room. Before leaving, Dave turned back to meet Linda's gaze. Both of them saw the pain reflected in each other's eyes. In that moment, Dave felt the full weight of their lives being torn apart. The 2 people who had become one almost 18 years ago were now brutally separated, becoming 2 once more. This wound wouldn't heal anytime soon, if at all. Dave and Ellie drove in silence to their next destination. The question of whether they were truly ready for what was coming weighed heavily on both their minds. Initially, Dave thought he might find some satisfaction in what was about to happen. But the realization of how many people would be hurt, seriously hurt, by this confrontation broke his heart. When they pulled up to Rich and Sonia's house, Dave parked behind his father's car. He knew his parents had come for dinner, and he prayed they would be okay after what they were about to witness. Dave needed them to see the evidence and understand why he was cutting his brother out of his life forever. His heart was pounding so hard he thought he might faint. Sensing his struggle, Ellie took his hand and gave him a reassuring smile. "Dad, everything will be fine. We can handle this." "Okay, baby," Dave said, his voice unsteady. "Remember, stay close to your grandparents and give them a photo when I give one to Sonia. Everything is under control." Ellie smirked faintly. "You still haven't answered. Are you going to beat up Uncle Rich?" "I don't plan to," Dave said, managing a small smile. "But we'll see what happens. And remind me later that we need to talk about your obsession with swearing." Ellie giggled softly, easing the tension. Dave and Ellie walked into the house without knocking, arriving just after everyone had finished dinner. The four adults were still gathered at the table, while the children were elsewhere in the house. Ellie rushed to hug her grandparents, her warm gesture masking the storm about to hit. Sonia greeted Dave warmly. "Hey Dave, I wasn't expecting you, but we have plenty of food if you're hungry." Dave kissed his sister-in-law on the forehead. "Thank you, but we've already eaten. I'm afraid we have an unpleasant topic to discuss." Sonia's smile faltered as Dave handed her a photo of Rich and Linda meeting at the motel. At the same time, Ellie handed a copy to her grandparents. The room erupted into a chorus of questions and gasps as the images became clearer. Dave handed a copy to Rich, his expression cold and unrelenting. "Well, dear brother, would you like to explain this?" Rich turned pale, shrinking back into his chair. "Yes," their father said, his tone sharp and demanding. "Can you explain this, Richard?" Sonia stood abruptly, staring at the photo in disbelief. Her shock quickly turned to rage as she rushed at her husband, shouting obscenities and accusations. Dave had to physically restrain her, guiding her back to her chair. "Let's listen to his explanation," Dave said firmly. "Yes," their mother added, her voice trembling with fury. "Let's hear it." Ellie hugged Sonia protectively as they waited for Rich's response. Rich stuttered and hesitated, his eyes darting around the room as he searched for an escape. Damn it. How did you get that photo?" "Wrong answer," Dave snapped, his voice rising. "I know the truth, so let's hear you confess it yourself." Rich's face flushed with anger and desperation. "If you know so much, why don't you tell the story yourself?" he blurted out. Sonia turned to Dave, her eyes pleading. "Dave, please just tell me." Dave's voice was steady but full of disgust. "This scumbag and my wife were having an affair. Not just some passing fling either. Oh no. They've been sneaking around since before he even met you, Sonia." Sonia let out a guttural scream, hurling curses and insults at Rich with the speed of a Tasmanian devil. Finally exhausted, she broke down into tears, ran into the living room, and threw herself onto the sofa. Their mother and Ellie followed her, offering comfort. Their father, however, walked up to Rich and stood uncomfortably close. His voice was low but filled with authority. "Is this true, Richard?" Rich looked up at his father, his face streaked with tears. He simply nodded. "You dumb bastard," their father said, his voice shaking with rage. "How could you do this to your brother? To your wife? Damn it, son. I don't know how I could possibly be more disappointed in you. You're a complete disgrace." "I'm sorry," Rich pleaded, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry." "Forget it," Dave interjected coldly. "There's nothing you can say to make this better. You're dead to me, man. I never want to see you again." Dave took a deep breath, his anger still simmering. He looked directly at Rich and said, "You're fired. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't have a brother anymore." Do you understand that? Rich tried to respond, but their father interrupted. Son, cool down a little. Dave's voice rose sharply. No, Dad. I don't have a brother. I never want to see him at Sunday dinners, holidays, weddings, or anything else. If he shows up too often, I'll take it as a clear sign of where your loyalty lies. His father sighed heavily, nodding. Okay, son, I understand. But don't expect your mom and me to reject him the way you're about to. I understand, Dave replied coldly. Just don't think this is something you can fix. Sonia stormed back into the dining room, her voice reaching a fever pitch. I've put up with your crap for years, and this is how you treat your family? Get out, pack your things and leave. Now. Come on, Rich, their father said sternly. And don't think you'll stay with us. None of us want to see you right now. Rich looked at his father, tears in his eyes, and then glanced at his mother, hoping for some semblance of tenderness. But all he found in her gaze was cold contempt. Defeated, he got up from his chair, his movements sluggish, and began to gather his belongings. Before Rich could leave the room, Dave stopped him with a final set of instructions. Listen, show up at Billy Hardwick's office at 10 a.m. on Monday. Give him your company card, and he'll hand you your pay packet. Read the terms and conditions carefully. Now, I need your keys to the office. Hannah and I will pack your things and leave them for you to collect. Rich fumbled with his keychain, avoiding Dave's gaze as he removed the office keys and handed them over. Dave then walked over to Rich's computer bag. At this, Rich visibly tensed, panic flashing across his face. I'm taking your computer, Dave said firmly. No, Rich exclaimed, his voice shaking. My things are in there. I can't allow a former employee to have access to company equipment or information, Dave replied coolly. Anything personal that's on here will be returned to you when you come in on Monday. Rich's voice rose in desperation. No, damn it. Give it to me for a few minutes. Rich's reaction alarmed Dave, confirming his suspicion that the laptop held something more than just work files. Determined to take the computer, Dave tightened his grip on the bag and said, Remember, this is company property. Stand back, Rich. In complete despair, Rich lunged at Dave, and the two brothers began to struggle. The scuffle ended quickly, with Dave managing to pull away with the computer bag. Dave glanced around the room, taking in the chaos of the moment. He turned to Sonia, his voice filled with remorse. Sonia, I'm so sorry for throwing this at you so suddenly. Can we talk privately this weekend? Sonia, still shaken, nodded slowly. I think so, she replied, her voice subdued. Dave then turned to his parents. Mom, Dad, I'm sorry about all of this. His mother gave him a sad but understanding look. We understand, she said softly. We'll talk later, okay? Yes, I'd like that, Dave replied. He turned to his father next. Could you and Mom stay behind to help Sonia? Make sure this idiot leaves peacefully? His father nodded. We can handle it, son. Take care of your family. You mean what's left of it? Dave said bitterly. It's just me and Ellie now. We're here for you too, son. His father reassured him. Dave gave a small nod, and with Ellie by his side, they left the house in silence. The car ride home was quiet. Dave's mind was racing with regrets about the scene he had caused. But another part of him, one fueled by years of betrayal, felt vindicated for finally confronting Rich. Ellie, noticing her father's distant expression, broke the silence. Dad, why was Uncle Rich so desperate to keep his computer bag? What do you think is in there? I don't know, Dave admitted, his brow furrowed. But I've been thinking about it too. Let's go home and find out. Ellie hesitated for a moment before asking, Are you okay? You were a little out of it back there. Dave sighed, shaking his head. I guess I wasn't myself. Well, Ellie said with a small grin, you probably liked it a little. Dave glanced at her, and they exchanged knowing smiles. Back at the house, Rich was left alone by his family, packing his belongings into several suitcases and trash bags. He was furious that his long-term affair had been exposed, but what infuriated him even more was that Dave had taken the computer bag he desperately needed. He made sure no one was watching as he carefully loaded a small metal box into one of the larger suitcases. Inside the box was something he believed he couldn't survive without. Once everything was packed, Rich loaded his car and left the house without saying goodbye to anyone. His only thought was to get as far away as possible. Heading north on the Pennsylvania Turnpike, Rich began formulating a plan. I need time, he muttered to himself, gripping the steering wheel tightly. I don't know when Dave will figure it out, but I have to disappear before he does. Rich didn't handle pressure well, and his plans were already unraveling. He thought about finding a small town in Wyoming or Idaho, renting a cheap place for cash, and then continuing west to ditch the car. From there, he would figure out how to access the funds he needed to survive. But without the file on Dave's laptop, his accounts were effectively locked. Damn it! Rich cursed, slamming his fist against the steering wheel. In his haste and panic, Rich missed two crucial details. One was lying on the console beside him, and the other was directly above his rearview mirror. Meanwhile, Dave realized as they neared home that neither he nor Ellie had eaten dinner. He stopped for fast food, and they ate quietly on the drive back. Both father and daughter were lost in thought, their minds turning over the events of the evening and the secrets that might still be hidden in Rich's computer bag. When Dave and Ellie arrived home, the house felt unusually empty. On one hand, they were relieved not to deal with Linda, but her absence left an undeniable gap in their lives. After eating their fast food in silence, Dave took his brother's computer bag to his home office to examine its contents. At first, everything seemed normal, typical files, receipts, and notes. But then, Dave came across an envelope that didn't look right. It bore the logo of one of the company's major clients, Brandy Water Processes, yet there was no writing on it. Curious, he opened it and found a check for $19,900 made out to Rich's cleaning services. It didn't take long for Dave to come up with potential scenarios to explain the check, none of which were good. A bribe, he muttered to himself. Rich, what have you been doing? Finding no other incriminating documents in the bag, Dave turned on the computer. Using his administrative password, he accessed Rich's files. It didn't take long for him to locate a folder that a novice might think was hidden, but Dave was no novice. When he opened the folder, the contents shocked him. Realizing the severity of what he had just discovered, Dave immediately called his lawyer and friend, Bill Hardwick. Dave, Bill answered, his tone calm. I was hoping you'd call. How did the confrontation go? As expected, Dave replied tersely. But I've come across new information, and once again, I need your help. This time, it's urgent. Is it as urgent as last night? Probably. Can you come over? I don't want to leave Ellie alone. Should I bring Angela with me? Bill asked. It's not related to the divorce, but she's always welcome. Bill arrived 25 minutes later and immediately asked, What's the latest crisis? Dave handed him the check and showed him the contents of the computer file. What do you think, Bill? Bill scanned the documents carefully before leaning back in his chair. You already know what I think, don't you? At a minimum, this is bribery and blackmail. Possibly tax evasion, fraud, and who knows what else. These are federal crimes, Dave. The FBI will need to get involved. And with this much evidence, We're looking at a guaranteed prison sentence for Rich. Dave exhaled sharply. What should I do? Let me call a friend at the bureau, Bill said, pulling out his phone. Based on what you've told me about Rich's behavior, he's definitely a flight risk. We need to act fast. Bill left a voicemail with his FBI contact and returned to Dave, who was pacing the office. All right, Bill said. My friend should call back in the morning. We'll need to meet with him as soon as possible. In the meantime, let me take the computer, the check, and the bag with me. If Rich is desperate enough, he might try to take them from you. Good idea, Dave agreed, handing over the items. Bill smirked. You know, Dave, most people pay extra for legal services on weekends and outside of business hours. What's your fee, Bill? Dave asked, laughing softly despite the tension. Oh, I don't know. How about a bottle of Balvenie 14-year-old single malt? Agreed, Dave said with a faint smile as he walked Bill to the door. Just as Bill was leaving, a thought occurred to him. Oh, Dave, one more thing. We probably shouldn't give Rich the retirement agreement as it's currently written. Good point, Dave said. I don't want to tip him off about FBI involvement. Can you revise it to delay payment? Maybe base it on expense reconciliation or something. Consider it done, Bill replied before heading out. The next morning, Dave received an early call from Bill. We have a meeting at 10 a.m. with Agent Steve Major at the FBI office in Philadelphia. Bring the evidence. Ellie, as expected, refused to stay behind. We're in this together, Dad, she insisted. Dave and Bill presented the evidence to Agent Major, who meticulously reviewed the documents before calling in his superior, Jack Sims. After carefully examining the check, spreadsheet, and offshore account details, Jack leaned back in his chair and rubbed his chin. Let me get this straight, he said. We have a spreadsheet documenting all the bribes, an outstanding check from the most recent payment, and offshore account details totaling how much? $1, $785, $952, Dave replied. And all these funds belong to your company? Jack asked. I would think so, Dave said. Rich had the authority to negotiate pricing on projects, as long as the gross margin didn't fall below 23%. On every project I reviewed, the margin was just above that limit. He was clearly giving clients the lowest possible price in exchange for bribes, which were insignificant compared to the savings for the clients. Jack nodded gravely. So we have 14 clients willing to do business this way. You realize they'll all be prosecuted too, right? Yes, sir, Dave replied. Jack turned to Agent Major. Do we know where Rich is? No, Dave said. He was supposed to meet Bill on Monday to collect his pay packet. But based on his reaction when I took the computer and the fact that his wife and family kicked him out, he's probably on the run. He's definitely a flight risk, Major added. Steve, see if you can locate his cell phone, Jack ordered. And check if his car has an active OnStar system. The room fell silent as they waited for Steve to return. Finally, he walked in holding a printout. He's on the run, Steve reported. Luckily, he's not smart enough to turn off his phone or OnStar. He's currently in Ohio, heading west on Route 80. Okay, Jack said decisively. Let's track him and coordinate with local offices as he moves through their jurisdictions. We'll apprehend him as late as possible on Sunday. That will give us time to finalize charges by Monday morning. But we can hold him for 48 hours on suspicion. The team agreed on the plan, and Dave felt a small sense of relief. At least they were taking steps to stop Rich from causing any more damage. Meanwhile, Rich was speeding west on the Pennsylvania Turnpike, his mind racing. He was furious that Dave had taken his computer bag. It contained the only access he had to his offshore accounts. Damn it! Rich cursed, slamming his fist on the steering wheel. In his haste to leave, he had overlooked two critical details. One lying on the console beside him, and another directly above his rearview mirror. Rich needed a new plan, but his thoughts were scattered. He considered heading to Wyoming or Idaho, renting a cheap place for cash, and then moving further west to ditch his car. He even thought about stealing a vehicle to avoid detection, but his anxiety made it hard to think clearly. What Rich didn't know was that the FBI was already tracking his every move. Dave and Ellie stopped for a quick dinner on the way home, neither of them speaking much. When they finally arrived, Dave felt the weight of everything that had happened. "Dad," Ellie asked quietly, "do you think Uncle Rich was hiding something bigger?" "I do," Dave replied, "and I think we're about to find out what." On the way home from formally filing charges, Bill, Ellie, and Dave chatted freely, trying to lighten the mood. Despite the severity of Rich's crimes, Dave couldn't help but feel relief that Rich's more sinister plans, those tied to Ellie's DNA test, would no longer matter. If the results had shown that Ellie was Rich's daughter, Rich could have used that to demand financial support for 18 years. Compared to that, prison seemed like a better alternative, and for that, Dave was immensely grateful. Bill dropped Dave and Ellie off at home, and the two immediately prepared to meet Sonia and Dave's parents at Sonia's house. When Dave and Ellie arrived, Sonia was visibly distraught. Dave's mother spent most of the meeting in tears after learning about her youngest son's actions, while his father looked furious, his anger simmering just beneath the surface. Sonia, on the other hand, was more focused on the immediate future. "Dave," she said tearfully, "what do I do now? How are we going to live? I mean, I'm glad that idiot—" "Oh, Mom, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that." "It's okay, honey," Dave's mother said gently. "I understand." Sonia wiped her eyes and continued, "I'm glad he's going to prison. Someday, when we get through the storm, I'll tell you all the things he did to me. But now, what should I do?" Dave nodded and proposed his plan, hoping Sonia would agree. "First, we'll get you a lawyer. I recommend Angela Hall. She's handling my divorce, and she's the best. If Rich ends up in jail, you should be able to claim the majority of your joint assets in the divorce settlement. Second, if what the FBI says about Rich stealing money from the company is true, those funds will eventually be recovered. Once that happens, I'll need some of it to reorganize my business, but the remaining money, most of it will go into a trust fund for you and the boys. You'll have full access to it whenever you need it. Finally, I know you have an associate degree in business, so I assume you're familiar with accounting and basic bookkeeping. I'd like to offer you Linda's old position at my company. You can work from home, which means you'll still be able to take care of the boys. How does that sound?" Sonia's face crumpled as tears streamed down her cheeks. Overcome with emotion, she threw her arms around Dave, crying tears of both relief and gratitude. Dave's parents also pledged their support, promising to help Sonia and her sons in any way they could. As they left, Dave glanced at Ellie, who was beaming with pride. "You're amazing, Dad," she said softly. On the way home, Dave struggled to broach a sensitive topic. "Babe," he began hesitantly, "earlier we were talking about maybe doing a DNA test. Have you thought about it any more?" Ellie sighed, her expression serious. "I've been thinking, and it's a tough decision, but I think we have to do it. Is that okay with you?" "Of course," Dave said quickly. "Aren't you angry?" "No," Ellie said firmly. "I can't be angry about it. And I think you're right, we need to know. I'll buy the tests this week," Dave promised. "And Ellie, I hope you believe me when I say the results won't change anything about how much I love you." Ellie smiled through her tears. "I love you too, Dad. And I believe you. I just want to know." Dave felt a wave of relief wash over him. He had been terrified to bring up the topic, but now that they had talked it through, he felt more at peace. There was still so much to be done, but checking one more item off his list helped him feel that the end of this nightmare was finally within reach. Meanwhile, Rich was driving west on Route 80. He had driven through the night, stopping just before crossing into Ohio for a quick breakfast at a McDonald's. Exhausted but desperate, he used his iPad to search for a place to lay low. He eventually settled on Sioux Falls. It seemed remote enough to avoid detection, yet large enough to blend in. After reserving a cheap furnished room online, he made a plan. He would drive 6 hours north to Fargo, ditch the car, and return to Sioux Falls by bus. Feeling a glimmer of hope for the first time in days, Rich slammed the car door shut and shouted, "Yes, I have a plan." But as he got back on the road, doubts began to creep in. The more he thought about his plan, the more it felt like a series of desperate, stupid decisions. Rich briefly considered turning himself in and seeking mercy from the court. But the thought of facing the consequences scared him even more than running did. Instead, he forced himself to focus on his anger, using it to drown out his regrets. He thought about his family and what he had done to them. Somewhere deep down, he knew he loved them, his sons, his wife, even Dave. But acknowledging that love was too painful, so he hardened his heart and continued driving. By the time he reached a Cracker Barrel parking lot, Rich was dangerously close to falling asleep at the wheel. He parked in an inconspicuous spot and took a nap for a few hours. Rich woke up just as the restaurant was opening for breakfast. After eating, he got back on the road, his thoughts spiraling as he drove. No matter how much he wanted to deny responsibility for his actions, the weight of the consequences was becoming unbearable. He thought about Sonia and the boys he had abandoned. He thought about Dave, the brother he had betrayed. He thought about Linda, whose life was also in ruins because of him. For a brief moment, he wondered what had driven him to go so far astray. But he quickly shoved the thought aside, forcing himself to focus on the road ahead. Daylight was fading, and Rich's path was growing darker in every sense of the word. As Rich pulled up to a diner near Omaha, he felt a fleeting sense of relief. It was only 200 miles to Sioux Falls, where he had reserved a cheap motel room. His plan was finally coming together. The next morning, he would settle into the room and then drive to Fargo to dispose of the car. Everything seemed to be going well, so he thought. Rich parked his car and began walking toward the diner's door. Before he could enter, 2 men approached him. One of them spoke, "Are you Richard Pearson?" In that instant, Rich knew he was caught. The FBI had found their man. On Monday morning, Dave arrived at the office early, bringing donuts, bagels, and coffee for his employees. He had scheduled an all-hands meeting for 9 a.m. At the meeting, Dave introduced Debbie Gleon and Tammy Fields as the company's new sales team. The staff, still reeling from the recent revelations, appreciated the transparency and welcomed the changes. Many were relieved that Debbie and Tammy, 2 long-time trusted employees, were being given more responsibility. Dave used the meeting to deliver all the unpleasant news and explain the necessary changes. Once the initial shock wore off, he felt the weight of uncertainty begin to lift. He could finally start focusing on moving forward, both professionally and personally. The next morning, Rich was formally charged with several crimes, including bribery, blackmail, and fraud. Charges against the clients who had participated in the scheme were expected to follow as the FBI continued its investigation. Knowing that his business would lose a significant portion of its customer base due to the scandal, Dave began restructuring his company. He planned to split the manufacturing division under a new name while developing the distribution arm into a separate entity. The new strategy allowed him to mitigate losses and rebuild trust with his remaining clients. He worked tirelessly to finalize the business details, all in time for Linda's eventual return. an encounter he knew would demand every ounce of his wit and emotional strength. On Friday evening, Dave and Ellie were enjoying their first Chinese movie night without Linda. The tradition felt strange without her, but their father-daughter bond had grown stronger in her absence. Midway through dinner, Dave's phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen and saw Linda's name. Taking a deep breath, he answered. "What, Linda?" he said, his tone cold. "Dave, I miss you," Linda said, her voice trembling. "It's good to hear your voice," Dave replied, but there was no warmth in his words. "What do you want?" I'm ready to come home. Is that okay?" "Come back tomorrow morning," Dave said curtly. "We'll talk and figure things out then. Have you found a lawyer?" "Yes," Linda said. "I hired Rhonda." "Good. We'll talk tomorrow," Dave said, cutting her off and hanging up. Ellie, who had overheard the conversation, placed a hand on her father's arm. "Are you okay?" Dave forced a smile to reassure her. "I'm fine," he said. Ellie smirked. "How did you handle it?" "Short and sweet," Dave replied. "And borderline rude." "I liked it," Ellie said with a grin. "Just remind me never to make you angry." "Oh, baby," Dave said, chuckling. "I don't think you could ever make me as angry as your mother did." They returned to the movie, though neither would remember much of it an hour later. Their thoughts were consumed by the problems in their lives. Still, the time they spent together strengthened their bond in ways neither had anticipated. On Saturday morning, Dave and Ellie were sitting in the living room, each immersed in their iPads, when Linda walked in. She hesitated at the doorway, unsure of what to say. Ellie stood up without a word and walked upstairs to her room, deliberately avoiding eye contact with her mother. Dave looked up from his iPad just in time to catch the pain on Linda's face. Without a word, he turned back to his screen, finishing his game of solitaire. "Hey, Dave," Linda said hesitantly. Dave raised a finger in the universal gesture for wait. Less than a minute later, after his game ended in failure, he sighed in disappointment, closed the iPad, and finally turned his attention to her. "Okay, Linda," he said. "Let's talk. Have you read the documents?" "Yes," Linda said quietly as she sat down. "I've accepted the offer. But can't we talk about staying together as a family? I can't bear the thought of everything changing." "What?" Dave asked incredulously. "Stay married while you date whoever you want. Whenever you want?" "No," Linda protested. "That's not what I meant. We were a happy, loving family. Why does it have to end?" "I'll never take that risk again," Dave said firmly. "What did you think would happen when your 17-year affair was discovered?" "Huh? Oh wait, I get it. You never thought you'd get caught. You figured you'd just keep your dirty little secret and keep dating my stupid brother while laughing at me." Stupid old Dave sitting at home alone. "No," Linda cried. "It was never like that. We never said anything bad about you, and I'll never cheat on you again. I can't bear the thought of putting us all through this again." Dave's voice turned cold. "Are you telling me that you spent 17 years disrespecting me and our family without ever considering the consequences? And now you expect me to believe that the fear of consequences will magically stop you from being selfish?" Linda's tears began to flow again. "Please, Dave," she sobbed. "Just one more chance. Is that too much to ask?" "Yes," Dave snapped. "Damn it, Linda, that's too much. Once or twice, maybe, even then it would have been hard, but maybe I could have forgiven you. But 17 years? What was that? Was he so much better than me? Did he have some special skill that melted your resistance? Or maybe you realized you married the wrong brother and were secretly in love with him the whole time. What made you want him so uncontrollably? Tell me, Linda." Linda collapsed onto the sofa, sobbing uncontrollably. Through her tears, she tried to explain. No. I never loved him. He was terrible, selfish. He never thought about me. Dave's expression darkened. Wow, he said, his voice calm but cutting. So, for the sake of having bad intimacy with someone you didn't even love, you risked everything. You risked your marriage, your family, your daughter, everything. Linda buried her face in her hands, unable to respond. To date him for 17 years, Dave said, his voice heavy with bitterness. Imagine how warm and cozy it makes me feel knowing that you cared so little about me that you kept this going without ever trying to stop it. And you still can't tell me why, can you? I don't know, Linda cried, her voice trembling. I really don't know. It was stupid and selfish. The first time, it was a mistake. We drank too much while you weren't home. After that, it continued because he threatened to tell you if we stopped. Maybe there was some small thrill in sneaking around, in avoiding punishment. I don't know. I don't know. Dave's voice softened, but the edge of pain remained. How does it feel now, Linda? Admit it, it's over between us. Linda broke down into sobs, burying her face in her hands. Dave looked at her for a moment, his anger wavering. He decided it was time to soften his tone, if only to bring the conversation to a resolution. Take a few minutes to calm down, he said gently. Would you like some water? Please, Linda croaked, her voice hoarse. Dave walked to the refrigerator, grabbed a bottle of water, and handed it to her. When you're ready, come to the table, and we'll talk about the documents and the living arrangements. Upstairs, Ellie sat on her bed, listening to her parents' conversation. She didn't want to cry, but she couldn't hold back her tears. Hearing them argue was unbearable. Her father's pain broke her heart, but so did the realization of her mother's betrayal. Still, her anger toward Linda kept her composed. She clung to the thought that she and her father could heal together. As for her mother, Ellie cared about her, but right now, she felt no sympathy for her suffering. If Linda was drowning in her own unhappiness, so be it. While Linda remained at the table, Dave decided to take a moment for himself. He stepped into the bathroom, locked the door, and allowed himself to cry. These were tears he didn't want Linda to see. He needed to toughen up to protect his emotions and his resolve. When he finally pulled himself together, he splashed cold water on his face, took a deep breath, and left the bathroom. As he walked back to the dining room, he saw Linda slowly making her way to the table. Dave sat down across from her, studying her face. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying, her entire demeanor a picture of defeat. She looked utterly broken, and it tore at him. In that moment, Dave felt an internal conflict. A part of him wanted to ease her suffering, while another part wanted to revel in her pain. But he decided then and there that the shouting and accusations had to stop, at least on his part. I'm sorry for yelling, Linda, he said, his voice calm. I'll try to control myself. Linda barely whispered. Okay, you can yell at me, scold me, hit me if you want, if it will help us stay together. But I know that won't happen. No, Dave said firmly. It won't. Have you read the documents? Dave asked. Yes, Linda replied, her voice breaking. Everything is fair. I can't give up Ellie. If she stays with me, I have to keep the house. I'll refuse some of the money you offered, but please, let Ellie stay with me. I need her. Dave shook his head. I can't do this, Linda. You know how special my connection with Ellie is. You've taken my family from me. I've lost my best friend. And now you want me to give up the person I love most in the world? It won't happen. I've already lost so much. I'm not losing Ellie, too. Linda's voice cracked as she pleaded. Dave, you won't lose her. You'll still see her. She'll be with you often. But I need to heal the wounds I've caused. I need her with me to fix this. I can't do it without her. It won't work the way you think, Dave said, his tone sharp. All Ellie feels for you now is anger. If you force this, she'll resent you even more. Living apart will help her process everything. Maybe, in time, we can both encourage her to forgive you. But if you make her stay with you against her will, you won't like the results. Linda's composure snapped. Damn it, Dave. I won't give her up, she screamed. Neither Dave nor Linda noticed that Ellie was standing just around the corner, listening to every word. As Linda's voice rose, Ellie stepped into the room, her face burning with rage. You won't give me up? Ellie shouted, her voice trembling with fury. You don't get to make that decision. You've already thrown everything away. Linda turned to face her daughter, tears streaming down her face. Ellie, please. But Ellie wasn't done. She unleashed a torrent of anger, screaming at her mother for every betrayal, every lie, and every selfish act. Her words were sharp and unforgiving, cutting Linda to the core. Do you even realize what you've done? Ellie demanded. You destroyed our family. You hurt Dad. You ruined everything. Linda tried to turn away, but Ellie moved to block her, refusing to let her escape. At one point, Ellie grabbed her mother's chin, forcing Linda to meet her gaze. Look at me, Ellie shouted. See the anger. See what you've done. Dave watched from the sidelines, torn between letting Ellie vent her anger and stepping in to stop her. Finally, he decided it was time to intervene. Gently, he walked over to Ellie and placed a hand on her shoulder. That's enough, baby, he said softly. Ellie turned to her father, her fury dissolving into tears. She allowed him to pull her into a hug, letting him guide her away from Linda. Linda sat frozen, trying to recover from the emotional onslaught. She fought back tears as she looked at her daughter. With as much dignity as she could muster, she pleaded, Ellie, please. I love you. I need you to be with me. Ellie stepped out of her father's embrace and looked at her mother with cold, unwavering eyes. That won't happen, she said calmly. I'll run away to Daddy every day. And if I'm stuck here with you, I'll make your life miserable. Daddy won't be here to pull me away from you. Got it? Linda's face crumpled at her daughter's words, and she whispered, What do you mean? As Ellie calmly delivered her final remark to Linda and walked upstairs, a small, bittersweet smile played on her lips. Though she felt some satisfaction in expressing her anger, the deep sadness beneath it all brought tears to her eyes. Linda, on the other hand, realized she couldn't stay in the same house while the divorce was ongoing. Not wanting to rent an apartment, especially since she intended to fight for custody of Ellie and the house, she temporarily moved in with her sister. The divorce battle lines were drawn, and soon, the family found themselves in court before Judge D. Lawson. Judge Lawson reviewed the details of both divorce petitions, forming an idea of how to proceed. Normally, he was inclined to order family counseling, but in this case, it was clear that such an attempt would be futile. A 17-year affair with her husband's brother was too monumental a betrayal to reconcile through therapy. That left only one major issue to resolve: custody of their daughter, Ellie. By legal standards, custody was often awarded to the mother. However, Ellie was nearing the age when her own preferences would weigh heavily in the court's decision. The judge decided it would be best to hear from Ellie directly to assess her maturity and perspective. When the trial opened, all preliminary procedures were completed, and Linda's lawyer began the process. Your Honor, Linda's lawyer began, my client does not want a divorce and has filed a counterclaim, but only if reconciliation proves impossible. In this regard, she asks the court to order at least 12 counseling sessions, or as many as needed for the spouses to reconcile. Judge Lawson interjected, his voice calm but firm. Counselor, having reviewed the details of this case, I see no reason for counseling. The reasons for the divorce are clear and leave no room for reconciliation. Ordering counseling would be a waste of time and resources. Your petition is denied. Linda's lawyer nodded reluctantly and moved on. Your Honor, the main issue, then, is custody of their daughter. Judge Lawson raised a hand. Counselor, to save time, I would like to speak with Ellie Pearson in my chambers. We'll take an extended lunch break, and Ellie will join me along with a court officer for a sandwich. Does that work for you, Ellie? Yes, Your Honor, Ellie replied confidently. Linda stood abruptly. No, I should be with her. Judge Lawson's voice cut through the courtroom with authority. Mrs. Pearson, you are disturbing the order of the court. You will not be present during this conversation. The court officer will ensure Ellie's safety and well-being. This discussion is private. Reluctantly, Linda sat back down. The judge adjourned the trial until 1:30 p.m. and left the room with Ellie and the court officer. In Judge Lawson's office, Ellie was greeted with a handshake and a warm smile. Hi, Ellie. It's really nice to meet you, the judge said. And you too, Your Honor, Ellie replied. Though, honestly, I wish we were meeting under better circumstances. The judge chuckled softly. Fair enough. You don't have to be so formal outside of the courtroom, though. Thank you, but I think you've earned your title. It feels wrong not to use it, Ellie said with a polite smile. The judge nodded, impressed by her thoughtfulness. Well, young lady, I imagine this has been a tough time for you. It has, Ellie admitted, but not as bad as it's been for Dad. That's what I thought, the judge said with a kind smile. All right, let's look at the sandwich menu, and I'll have the usher place our order. Then we can talk. Sounds good, Ellie replied. After their food was ordered, the judge took some time to chat with Ellie about neutral topics. He wanted to get a sense of her personality and maturity. By the time they finished eating, Judge Lawson was thoroughly impressed. Well, he said, let's get to the main topic. Ellie, just so you understand, it's rare for custody to be awarded to the father. In most cases, custody goes to the mother. How do you feel about that? Ellie sat up straighter, her expression serious. Your Honor, I think that's a lazy approach. It doesn't take into account everything that's happened, and it certainly doesn't align with what I want, or what I think is best. The judge leaned back in his chair, intrigued. Fair enough. So, what do you think should happen and why? I need to stay with Dad, Ellie said firmly. This isn't just an emotional response from a child. I have real reasons. Tell me more, the judge encouraged. First of all, Ellie began, Dad and I have always been closer than Mom and I, not in a bad way. I loved my mom. Loved, past tense. Deep down, I'm sure I still love her. But what she did to Dad was cruel. I've never seen him cry before, and now it happens all the time. She destroyed him. She destroyed me, too. Dad and I need each other to heal from how she betrayed us. The judge nodded thoughtfully. Your mom probably needs you, too. Shouldn't that be taken into account? Ellie shook her head. It might sound like I want revenge, but I don't. She made her choices, and now she has to live with them. Dad isn't the type to be alone. He needs me more than she does, and I want more than anything to stay with him. The judge leaned forward. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Yes, Ellie said, her tone sharp with determination. How old do I have to be before I can choose for myself? 16, the judge replied. That's what I thought, Ellie said. I'll turn 16 in 3 months. If you decide that I have to live with Mom, then in 3 months, Dad and I will have to spend more money and come back here to tell you I want to stay with him anyway. Why make us go through all that when you can decide now? The judge raised an eyebrow, impressed by her logic. That's a valid point, he said. Ellie continued, her voice softening slightly. Right now, I can't control my anger when she's around. I know that someday, I'll have to get over it and mend my relationship with her. But I can't do that now, not after everything that's happened. Being forced to live with her would only make things worse for both of us. Forcing me to stay with her right after she's done this isn't going to make us best friends, Ellie said, her tone steady but sharp. In fact, I'll be unhappy, and I think I'll make her unhappy too. Is that a fact? Judge Lawson asked, raising an eyebrow. Ellie took a deep breath. Let me be honest. I'll run to Daddy every chance I get. When I'm in the same room with her, I'll make sure she understands that forcing you to make the wrong choice was a mistake. The judge tilted his head slightly. Oh? So, you have plans to get revenge on her? I wouldn't put it that way, but yes, she'll know it was a mistake, Ellie admitted calmly. Judge Lawson chuckled lightly. Would you like to share these plans of yours? Not really, Ellie said with a faint smile. I see, the judge replied, amused. Then, with a thoughtful look, he asked, just curious, have you thought about becoming a lawyer? I'm already on that path. Next summer, I'll be helping out on Mrs. Hall's legal team, Ellie said with a hint of pride. That's great to hear, Judge Lawson said, nodding in approval. I have to say, Ellie, when you get your bar license, I wouldn't want to be your opponent in court. Ellie smiled warmly at the compliment. So, the judge continued, shall I take you back to your dad? That depends, Ellie said, her expression turning serious. Will you let me stay with him? The judge leaned back, considering her. I'll make my decision soon, and everyone will know what I've decided. Ellie gave him a pointed look. I know the judge is considered wise and fair. I hope that's true. And I hope that in an hour, you'll tell me the same thing you're telling me now. Judge Lawson raised an eyebrow. Are you blackmailing me? He asked, a friendly smile tugging at his lips. No, Your Honor. I'm just telling the truth. The whole truth and nothing but the truth, Ellie said with a sly grin. They both laughed and shook hands before heading back to the courtroom. When Ellie found her father, she told him with quiet confidence. I think everything went well. Dave smiled at her, grateful for her strength. We'll find out soon enough. When court resumed, Judge Lawson immediately took the floor. I had a serious conversation with Ellie, he began. Both parents should be very proud of this amazing young woman. She calmly and professionally expressed her thoughts to me, and I took them into account in my decision. Linda's lawyer leaned over to whisper something to her, but Linda couldn't contain herself. Tell him, she blurted out, loud enough for everyone to hear. The judge slammed his gavel down and glared at her lawyer. Counselor, are we in trouble? I'm sorry, Your Honor, the lawyer stammered. My client has informed me of an issue that may affect your decision. The judge sighed, his patience clearly wearing thin. All right, let's hear it. And it had better be good. Yes, Your Honor, Linda's lawyer began. Mrs. Pearson has indicated that there is a significant possibility that Mr. David Pearson is not the biological father of their daughter. If this is the case, it could be argued that he has insufficient grounds to claim custody. The courtroom fell silent, except for the sound of Ellie's sharp intake of breath. Dave turned to her and saw her smile, a knowing, confident smile that told him everything was under control. Judge Lawson, however, was clearly unimpressed. Counselor, in Pennsylvania, biological parentage is irrelevant to custody claims. You should know that. Linda's lawyer hesitated. Your Honor, we propose a stay of proceedings pending a DNA test and its analysis. Dave's lawyer, Angela Hall, rose to respond. Your Honor, anticipating Mrs. Pearson's tactics, We conducted DNA testing through an accredited laboratory. The results are certified and accompanied by a notarized affidavit from the testing agency. She handed the documents to the bailiff, who delivered them to Judge Lawson and Linda's lawyer. As you can see, Angela continued, the results clearly show that Mr. David Pearson and Miss Ellie Pearson are, in fact, father and daughter. The judge examined the documents, his expression softening. Counselor Hall, this is interesting, and I'm sure, a relief for both father and daughter. In any case, based on the laws of this state, the motion to delay and order additional DNA testing is denied. Linda began to cry as her lawyer tried to console her. Judge Lawson continued, his voice steady. As I said earlier, although the mother is typically granted primary custody, I believe it is in everyone's best interest to honor Miss Pearson's wishes. Therefore, I am granting Mr. Pearson's custody petition. Ellie's heart leapt as the judge paused, his voice softening with emotion. It pains me to see a mother and daughter become estranged, he said. And the way this process has destroyed what was once a happy marriage is deeply regrettable. However, based on the evidence and testimony presented, I am granting the petition for divorce presented by Mr. Pearson. Both parties will receive a final decision in 6 to 8 weeks. I wish you all the best as you move forward. The gavel came down, signaling the end of the trial. Ellie ran to her father, throwing her arms around him in a tight embrace. As they turned to leave the courtroom, Linda approached them, her eyes blazing with anger. Well, you win, she said sarcastically, glaring at Dave. I hope you're happy. Dave turned to her, his expression calm but pained. Who are you becoming, Linda? No one won today. This is a loss for all three of us. Linda stared at him, stunned by his words. Dave gently squeezed Ellie's hand and began walking away. Come home, Linda called after him, her voice trembling. We'll talk about the details in a few days. Dave didn't look back. Linda collapsed onto a courtroom bench, her lawyer trying to console her. Through her tears, she whispered, But I love you. This is wrong. Dave heard her but chose not to respond. He and Ellie left the courthouse hand in hand, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. In the weeks that followed, the consequences of Rich and Linda's actions began to unfold. Rich pleaded guilty as part of a plea deal to avoid trial, fines, and a potentially lengthy prison sentence. He disclosed all hidden bank accounts and safe deposit boxes, agreeing to serve his time. Rich accepted an 8-year sentence in federal prison as part of a plea deal. He disclosed all his hidden bank accounts and safe deposit boxes to avoid a longer sentence. Meanwhile, Linda secured a reasonable job at a company 25 miles away from her old home. With the funds provided by Dave, she purchased a townhouse in a new neighborhood. The distance was ideal, close enough to visit Ellie but far enough to escape the judgment of former friends who no longer welcomed her. This was the fresh start Linda desperately needed. Dave, on the other hand, channeled his energy into restructuring his company. Debbie quickly emerged as a star in the sales department, bringing in large orders from new clients and retaining nearly all the accounts Dave had feared losing due to the bribery scandal. Tammy proved to be the perfect partner, seamlessly handling the internal operations of the department. Dave recognized that as his distribution business expanded, he would need to grow the sales team, and Debbie was the obvious choice to lead it. Though Dave's friends, and even Ellie, tried setting him up on dates, he showed little interest in female companionship. Single women from his church lined up, eager to meet the now coveted bachelor, but Dave wasn't in a rush. He missed Linda's company more than he had expected, though he couldn't forgive her. In his quiet moments, when he allowed himself to think about the possibility of moving on, only one woman came to mind. One morning, a few months after the judge finalized the divorce, Hannah walked into Dave's office holding the mail. "Hey, boss," she said, placing an envelope on his desk. "Looks like your divorce papers have arrived." Dave opened the envelope and scanned its contents. "Yep," he said with a sigh. "Looks like Judge Lawson was right. 7 weeks to the day. I guess I'm officially a free man now. How do you feel about that?" Hannah asked, her tone gentle. Dave took a moment to consider. "It's a real mix of emotions. Sadness and joy, relief and uncertainty. When I put it all together, I don't land on any one feeling. But if I had to pick, I'd say I feel anticipation. What Linda and I had was special. Now that it's gone, I want to find something special again. You know what I mean?" Hannah nodded with a half-smile. She hesitated, then turned toward the door. But instead of leaving, she slowly closed it and leaned against it, her back to him. For a moment, she was silent, as if summoning her courage. Finally, she spoke, her voice quiet but steady. "Dave, I need to tell you something. I've been afraid to say it, but here it is. I love you. I started loving you years ago, back when you and Linda kept trying to set me up on dates. But the truth is, I didn't want anyone else. I wanted you even though you were out of reach. And now, if you're interested, just ask me out when you're ready. My answer will be yes." Dave stood up, his eyes wide with surprise. "Dinner tonight?" he asked without hesitation. Hannah turned, her face lighting up with a smile. "Sure," she said, walking toward him. As he wrapped her in a warm embrace, she added playfully, "But let's keep it casual. Very casual. Very, very casual." Dave echoed with a grin. They laughed, their friendship deepening into something more. "We've had a wonderful friendship," Hannah said, her voice soft. "But this will strengthen it and open new horizons for us. Let's take our time and enjoy this new chapter. I don't want to rush you after everything you've been through." Dave smiled, his hesitation melting away. "There's nothing to regret," he said. "Honestly, I wish we were already there. But I understand why we need to take it slow. Still, all my doubts are gone. I love you, Hannah, with every fiber of my being. And if you're sure this isn't just a rebound for me, then I don't ever want it to end." "You have me," Hannah replied, her voice steady with conviction. "And I have you. Let's make this count." Ellie was thrilled when she found out about her dad and Hannah's relationship. "About time," she teased. "I've been trying to convince you to go for her for months." 6 months after their first date, Dave and Hannah were married in their church. True to their personalities, the wedding reception was casual and intimate. A backyard barbecue with 200 guests celebrating their love. The pool and other activities kept the kids entertained throughout the day. A large party tent with a dance floor and a bar provided entertainment for the adults. Music from a small live band filled the air, adding to the celebratory atmosphere. Dave and Hannah's wedding reception was the perfect mix of casual fun and heartfelt joy. As expected, some family members and friends expressed surprise at how quickly Dave and Hannah had decided to marry, especially since Hannah was 8 years younger than Dave. The couple, however, had a simple explanation. They quickly realized they had found the right partner. Besides, Hannah was already 3 months pregnant, and the couple, still relatively young, planned to have many more children. Toward the end of the party, an unexpected but familiar face appeared in the backyard. "Oh, look," Hannah said to Dave. "Linda is here. Let me go greet her." Both women were unsure of how the visit might go, but Hannah's worries disappeared the moment Linda smiled and gave her a warm hug. "Congratulations, Hannah," Linda said sincerely. "It looks like an amazing celebration." "Well, you know Dave and his famous pork skewers," Hannah joked. "How are you doing? You look beautiful." Linda smiled softly. "I'm still working on myself, but I'm in a much better place than I was 7 or 8 months ago. Look, I want you to know that I think it's great that you and Dave found each other. Please believe me. I wish you nothing but the best. You're two of my favorite people." At that moment, Dave joined the conversation, surprising Linda with a warm hug. "Hi, Linda. I'm so glad you came, but I was hoping you'd come a little earlier," Dave said. "I thought about it," Linda replied, "but I didn't want to be the annoying ex who steals attention from you too. As I just told your beautiful new wife, I'm so happy for you both." "Thank you. I appreciate it," Dave said. "So, are you ready for Ellie to spend 3 weeks with you while we honeymoon? I'm looking forward to it. I hope she's not too worried about it," Linda said with a chuckle. Dave smiled. "Don't tell her I said this, but she's looking forward to being with you while we're gone. I think she feels a little guilty about some of the things she said and did, but I told her that strong emotions need to be expressed if she's ever going to move past them. You'll both be fine." Linda laughed nervously. "I hope you're right." Dave smirked. "Oh, and while you're here, are you going to meet my emotional support animal?" Linda blinked in confusion. "What? You still have Banjo, right?" "Of course, Banjo will be with Ellie when she stays with you," Dave replied with a mischievous grin. "But no, my emotional support animal is a pig. She's roasted, of course, but she really gives me positive emotions. Come and grab a plate." Both women burst out laughing, threatening to throw Dave into the pool for his cheeky joke. No two divorces or separations are alike. People react in different ways when bad things happen. When Dave discovered Linda's infidelity, he couldn't imagine ever finding joy in life again. Ellie, too, mourned the loss of the loving family she had known. At the same time, Hannah had resigned herself to the idea that she might have to live without love or settle for something less than what she wanted. A decade after the wedding, the pastor asked the congregation, "Who gives this woman to be married?" Dave answered confidently, "Her mom and I do." He then took Ellie's hand and placed it in that of her fiancé, Nathan Lawson, the grandson of Judge Stanley Lawson. Dave turned to take his place next to Hannah, who was shedding tears of joy. Linda and her fiancé sat nearby, smiling warmly. Over the years, Hannah and Linda had rebuilt their friendship, though Dave had kept his distance from his ex-wife. Time had softened the sharp edges of their relationship, and Dave no longer felt the need to isolate himself from Linda. As the ceremony continued, Hannah leaned over and whispered to Dave, "Moms, plural. Nice move, Mr. Pearson." Dave smiled back, then glanced at the wedding party. His youngest daughter, Jenna, was the flower girl, while his 10-year-old daughter, Sarah, stood proudly as her sister's maid of honor. His 3-year-old son, Dave Jr., served as the ring bearer. True to his reflective nature, Dave paused to soak in the moment. Surrounded by his family, his heart swelled with love and pride. A prayer of gratitude rose within him, a quiet thanks for the journey that had brought them all to this point. Ellie graduated at the top of her class from Temple University Law School, where she met Nate. Their relationship brought the Pearson and Lawson families closer together, creating a bond that seemed almost predestined. Nate, who focused on criminal law, joined Bill Hardwick's office, while Ellie pursued family law under Angela Hall's mentorship. Her personal experiences gave her a unique ability to empathize with her clients, and she quickly became one of the most sought-after attorneys in her field. Meanwhile, Dave's business flourished. The changes he made years ago exceeded all expectations, and the company thrived under the leadership of Debbie and Tammy. At 48 years old, Dave and Hannah began planning for retirement, dreaming of spending more time with their children and building memories as a family. As the wedding celebration wound down, Dave found a quiet moment to reflect. The pain of betrayal and loss had been replaced by a life filled with love, purpose, and happiness. He looked at Hannah, the woman who had taught him to love again, and at their children, who filled his days with laughter and joy. He saw Ellie, now a confident and successful woman, standing hand in hand with Nate, ready to embark on her own journey of love and family. Dave closed his eyes and whispered a silent prayer, for the strength that carried him through the darkest times, for the love that healed his broken heart, for the family that brought him unimaginable joy, and for the second chances that life had so graciously given him. In that moment, he knew one thing with certainty. Life's trials and heartbreaks can lead to something even more beautiful, because sometimes, even after everything falls apart, love finds a way to rebuild. At 55, Dave was far from being a billionaire, but thanks to a well-diversified portfolio and an excellent financial planner, his retirement goal was easily within reach. Sonia had married a remarkable man who managed the Eastern Territory for a major pumping company that Dave's business represented. In addition to the 2 boys Sonia had with Rich, she and her new husband now had a little girl who had just turned 4. Dave's parents were retired and in good health, transitioning to a leisurely lifestyle that included handing over the responsibility of hosting Sunday family dinners to Dave and Hannah. One Sunday, about 3 months after Ellie's wedding, Dave's father pulled him aside after the meal. "Son, I know I made you a promise," his father began, "but this time I'm going to break it. Rich is leaving next week, and he wants to see you and the family before he goes. Can he come this afternoon?" Dave thought for a moment. "I've actually been thinking about contacting him since he got out. I heard he joined a missionary team or something." "Yes," his father replied. "They support poor villages by working on projects like building schools and other infrastructure. He's heading to Tanzania to serve as a water purification specialist on the team." "How did that come about?" Dave asked, intrigued. "Well, while in prison, he became close to the prison ministry team. He says one of his cellmates really changed his life. Rich asked the ministry team to help him find a place where he could contribute after his release. When they found out about his skills and experience, they set everything in motion. He even studied Swahili while serving his time and speaks it fluently now. He also took the necessary courses while incarcerated, so he was ready to start working as soon as he got out. Over the past few months, he completed his training and raised monthly support for his work." Dave nodded thoughtfully. "He can come, but Sonia and her family may not react well. He's already been to see them several times." His father reassured him. "Everything is fine with them." "God, Dad, Sonia never told me. Are you blaming her?" his father asked gently. "You made it clear you wanted nothing to do with Rich." "Yes," Dave admitted. "I think you're right. So how do I feel about him now?" "Honestly, Dad, everything he did felt like a direct attack on me. Maybe that wasn't his intention, but it sure seemed that way at the time. When everything fell apart, I remember thinking it would have been kinder of him to just put a bullet in me. He went after almost everything that mattered to me. If it hadn't been for Ellie, I don't know what I would have done." "Yes," his father replied. "You two did a great job keeping each other together. Glory to God for that. Son, you mentioned feeling like Rich was targeting you. I don't think that was his main motivation, but on a subconscious level, you might be right. When he was apologizing to me, I think he was sincere, but he also said something that really struck me. He admitted that he never felt like part of the family. He said you were always the perfect son, someone he could never measure up to." Dave frowned. "You and Mom never made an example of me or showed favoritism. I don't understand where that came from." "He admitted it was all in his head," his father explained. "He saw that you were a better student and had talents he didn't, and he made conclusions that weren't true. But now he realizes that. I think I owe it to him, and to you, to sit down and clear things up." Dave sighed. Thank you, Dad. I knew you'd take it that way. I tend to spend a lot of time thinking about these things. Like during your half-hour morning visits to the toilet? His father teased. Okay, smart guy, Dave retorted, laughing with him. A few nights ago, Dave had been sitting alone on the back porch while Hannah put the kids to bed. The cool air and the floral scents from the garden had put him in a peaceful mood as he watched the sunset behind the trees. He had been overwhelmed with joy and gratitude as he reflected on how far everything had come after the chaos of 10 years ago. Sonia had remarried a wonderful man and was happier than ever. She had done an incredible job raising her boys, and her new husband had been a great influence on them. The money Rich had stolen had been recovered, and though Dave had initially thought the scandal would destroy his client base, it ended up being a blessing in disguise. It allowed him to restructure his business, which had led to tremendous growth and improved profitability. The restructuring of the distribution side of his company alone had been a game changer. Restructuring also brought Sonia's new husband into the spotlight. So, what do you mean, Dad? Dave asked, curious. His father replied, I never thought I'd say this, but it turns out that what Rich did was actually a huge blessing. Dave nodded thoughtfully, but his father noticed he hadn't mentioned something important. But your marriage was ruined, son. Linda and you were the perfect couple. Don't you think it's a tragic end to a beautiful love story? Dave sighed. Of course, Dad. But look at Hannah. I love her madly. I love everything about her. I wouldn't give it up or trade it for anything. Not even what Linda and I had. Do you love her more than Linda? His father asked gently. More? How can I measure that without filtering my feelings through all the pain and betrayal? I still have feelings for Linda, of course, but I will never feel the same way I did 15 years ago. The important thing is that the feelings I have for Hannah are at least as strong as what I had for Linda. But I choose to give myself and all my love to Hannah now. That's good to hear, his father said with relief. But you still haven't answered my question about Rich. Yes, Dave admitted. How do I feel about him? Everything I said about how things turned out affects how I feel about Rich. I hate what he did. But when I think about the way things ultimately worked out, I also have reasons to be grateful. He paid with more than 8 years of his life, so I don't feel any anger or desire for revenge anymore. It's similar to how I feel about Linda. Go on, his father prompted. Of course, he's still my brother. If he needed a kidney or something, I'd say yes. But I'll never be able to trust him or care for him the way I did 15 years ago. I think I understand, son, his father said thoughtfully. I must say, your perspective on everything that happened is touching. I'm not sure I'd have the courage to find the positives the way you do. Well, think about all the people involved, Dave explained. Sonia is in a much better position now. My business is thriving. My marriage to Hannah and the 3 children we have together are joys beyond anything I deserve. Even Rich has grown. He's returned to his faith through his prison experience, and he's working hard to become the best version of himself. Unfortunately, Linda is probably the only one who didn't end up in the best situation. Ellie tells me she's happy, but she still dreams of the life we used to have together. His father smiled wistfully. Son, you're a poet, you know that? Is that bad? Dave chuckled. No, his father replied, his expression growing somber. But I can't forget how broken you were back then. Yes, I was, Dave admitted. But during one of my many reflection sessions, I realized that what Rich did to me was like taking my precious china and smashing it on the floor. But God, in His mercy, helped me pick up the pieces and create a new mosaic, something even more beautiful and valuable. So what you're saying, his father began, is that what was broken is now better than ever? Exactly, Dave confirmed. But it's not just better, Dad. Everything is so much better for me now. And so ended the story, a tale filled with betrayal, pain, and bitter lessons. Life is unpredictable, and sometimes the people closest to us become the source of our deepest disappointments. But through perseverance, faith, and love, Dave and his family found a way to heal and thrive.